All right, good morning, everyone. I'm going to call to order this morning's special budget workshop this morning on May 21st at 9 a.m. I'd like to have roll call. Well, we're going to do the flag salute first, and we're going to have Mr. Chief Crater, please. Everybody rise. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Thank you, sir. All right. So next we're going to move into public comments. I believe we have a few, and I just want to thank the public for being here, whoever's here or watching online. If you can just let me know how many public comments we have.
Yes, Madam Mayor, just for the record, I'm going to note that all council members are present. We have 2 public comments. They are on the agenda item, but we'll go ahead and hear from them now. The first speaker is Howard Morrison, and to be followed by our last speaker, Ashley Brown Mills. As this is a business item, they will have 5 minutes, up to 5 minutes each. So, Mr. Howard Morrison, come on up, sir.
Good morning.
Good morning, sir. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you. I'm here on behalf of about 30 friends who play pickleball like myself. As you know, there is a new center now from Ronald Reagan where there are 17 pickleball courts. And there are a few items that we hope you will budget on our behalf. One is to complete paving of the parking lot area. There's gravel right now, and also the road on the way in. Frequently, it's not the best road built. It gets potholes and so forth. That's one budget item we'd like. And the other one, there's only 2, is to have more shade structures. When it gets to be about 85 degrees and people have been playing pickleball, it gets very hot, and then people are standing around. There is one waiting area that currently has a small bleacher set up with a structure above it for shade, but the rest of it is open, and there's no other shade areas for people to just stand and congregate waiting for a court to open up so that they can play. And that's it. So thank you for your consideration.
Thank you so much for coming in. I appreciate it. Next.
And our last speaker is Ashley Brown Mills. Welcome, Ashley.
Good morning, Miss Ashley. Thank you for coming in.
Good morning, Mayor, council members, and staff. Thank you again for the opportunity to speak and for inviting nonprofits to return during the budget workshop to continue this important conversation. My name is Ashley Brown Mills, and I represent Voices for Children. I'd like to begin by expressing appreciation for your thoughtful discussion at the last City Council meeting and your clear support of the nonprofit community. I also want to extend a special thank you to Councilmember Kalfas for his engagement and support during that discussion. Your comments recognizing the importance of nonprofit funding and community impact were truly appreciated. We understand and support the city's decision to direct all CDBG funding toward the Bridge Housing Program, and we appreciate your commitment to identifying local funding sources to continue supporting nonprofits. This shift toward more flexible funding is encouraging and has the potential to be more accessible and impactful. Historically, Voices for Children has received $15,000 in total support, including $10,000 in CDBG funding and $5,000 through community service grants. Like many organizations, we rely on this funding to provide consistent critical services to vulnerable children in our community. We were encouraged to hear council members speak about the importance of ensuring nonprofits are made whole through this transition. We also appreciated the discussion around increasing the grant cap and allowing greater flexibility in how the funds can be used. As you continue these conversations, we respectfully ask that you consider that for many nonprofits, including Voices for Children, a funding level closer to $15,000 reflects what we have historically relied on, maintaining funding at that level where possible, and aligning with the goal expressed by council of making nonprofits whole would help prevent gaps in services and ensure continuity of care for those we serve. We are grateful for your leadership, your responsiveness, and your commitment to strengthening partnerships with within the nonprofit sector. We look forward to continuing to work alongside you as these plans are finalized. We respectfully ask for your continued leadership, ensuring nonprofits can be made whole through this transition so we can continue serving our community without interruption. Thank you again for your time and consideration.
Thank you for coming in and speaking. All right, next we're going to move into our joint meeting of the city.
Madam Mayor,
Oh,
we
yes.
did get a last minute.
That's right, we did. I got so
request.
excited. Thank you.
No problem.
Let's do one more.
We will also hear from Annette Sheehy.
Hi, Miss Annette. Good to see you.
Sorry, I didn't realize the process.
You're fine, ma'am.
I'm Annette Sheehy from Thrifting for Gifting, and I also want to thank you for your consideration. In the past, we've received usually around $10,000 for our school zone program, which is addressing children for the beginning of the school year in your district. And last year, we did receive the $10,000, and as a result, we had money left over, and we were able to help the Mission Hope. We dressed 12 children from Mission Hope who were in school through their housing program. And should we receive money this year, I think that we would be able to do the same. So thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you very much. Okay, we're all good with public comments?
Yes, we are.
All righty, ma'am, thank you. All right, next we're going to move into our business area joint meeting of the City Council, Temecula Community Services District and successor agency to the Temecula Redevelopment Agency. We have one item under business. It's going to be to review proposed fiscal year 2027 through 31 for capital improvement program and fiscal year 2026 through 27 annual budgeting or annual operating budgets for the city of Temecula, the Temecula Community Services District, and the successor agency to the Temecula Redevelopment Agency. With that, I think we're going to be turning it over to our city manager, Mr. Aaron Adams, for a staff
Yes,
report.
I got this.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Good morning, Madam Mayor, members of the City Council, members of the public. I will cut directly to the end of today's budget story. The City of Temecula's budget is balanced in all 5 years, with reserves fully funded at 25% of operating expenditures. Forecasted revenues are conservatively adjusted to an increase of 5.9%, and expenditures reflect an increase of 8%. This is largely due to increases in both police and fire and contractual labor agreements. As you know, public safety represents the lion's share of our budget. We have also factored in a newly agreed upon 3-year city MOU for employees with a 3% COLA in year 1 and reclassification of 20 employees citywide. The draft budget and CIP this morning reflect the City Council priorities while also living within our means and taking enviable financial steps forward. The City Council has prioritized public safety staffing levels, well-maintained parks and streets, and responsive government and professional staff. These priorities are also reflected in the Quality of Life Master Plan. They are reflected in fiscal policies and fiscal discipline that continues to be exercised at the policy level. Last May, and again in the fall of 2025, I reminded the City Council and the public of the multi-year policy decisions and strategies that have been implemented and continue to remain relevant as we prepared the fiscal year 26-27 operating budget and 5-year CIP. It is important not to lose sight of these actions, which demonstrate the city's long-standing commitment to fiscal discipline and responsible financial management. Over the years, the city has taken proactive steps such as making prepayments to reduce pension obligations, establishing 2 irrevocable trusts for pension and retiree health obligations that continue to earn interest, and paying off the mortgage on the Civic Center, saving millions of dollars in interest costs. The city also paid off the mortgage on the Margarita Community Center, resulting in additional savings of hundreds of thousands of dollars in interest. At the same time, we have continued advancing our affordable housing efforts with complete and under construction projects that are now surpassing 900 units since we incorporated as a city. The City Council also committed to a 7-year debt payoff strategy, which the City Council accelerated to 5 years, with completion scheduled for this July, 2 short months away, ultimately saving millions more in debt service costs. Interesting note, we did some research on similar agencies and funded ratios statewide, and there is only one city above 95% funded, and no comparable cities at or above 100% funded level. We are in very rare company. Well done to everyone here. Throughout this period, we have consistently invested millions of dollars annually into maintaining and improving our road network, while also investing in homelessness prevention, diversion, assistance programs, and mental health services. In addition, the city has continued to limit liability and legal exposure through strategic contract partnerships, particularly with CAL FIRE and Riverside County Sheriff's Office. We were also one of the first cities in Riverside County to initiate a ballot measure for an add-on sales tax designed to improve and sustain the community's high quality of life. Other notable fiscal actions reflected in this budget include a $1 million repayment to the Fire Station Acquisition Fund as directed by the City Council, the complete payoff of the city's unfunded liability, which I mentioned, scheduled for July, and an additional deposit into the city's pension trust fund to help sustain a healthy pension funding status for many, many years to come. With respect to the Temecula Community Service District, or TCSD, last year I made a point to acknowledge the growth of over 30 years and all the amazing offerings and programs that we deliver year in and year out to the community. However, I was also flagging a future clash of available forecasted revenue between public safety and community services, and the City Council directed me at that time for conversation with the Strategic Fiscal Ad Hoc Subcommittee, of which we have met multiple times over the last 8 months. While we are not finished with the TCSD work plan, we did collectively begin operationally bending of the curve in fiscal year 25-26 and fiscal year 26-27 through natural attrition and staff vacancies. We've consolidated events and overall reevaluation of events and support. This must continue to be a priority as we do our longer-term financial planning. It will be important to analyze and adjust the expenditure side of the balance sheet, but we also must address the revenue side, which includes more than 20-year-old antiquated fees associated with the Community Services Department and other responsible revenue options, including corporate sponsorships and an acknowledgement of equity between resident versus non-resident to continue to deliver such high quality and expected programs and facilities. This past year, we began analyzing our library contract, and for this upcoming year, we will be recommending conducting a feasibility study to dive deeper into the financials and options of operating our municipal library. A requisite extension of county contract services will be required in the near term while fully exploring what our best business decision may become. Our CIP that you will hear about this morning reflects priorities and many, many multi-year capital projects that are in varied stages of planning, design, and of course, construction, all subject to available funding. At a glance, though, the CIP has $916 million in total projects, 69%, or $634 million in identified funding, with about $238 million in unspecified funding. This is largely due to the future phases of French Valley Parkway. It's interesting to note that in fiscal year 25-26, we will have expended $168 million in capital improvement projects. Today, you will see priorities assigned to future circulation projects, including sidewalks, road expansions, bridges, roundabouts, parks, and street rehabilitation. Not to be forgotten, you will also see large investment in public infrastructure projects and, of course, maintenance. We will continue to be aggressive yet strategic when it comes to federal lobbying efforts to close the funding gaps for major infrastructure projects. We will also remain focused and engaged at the WRCOG and RCTC level for complementary funding opportunities for some of these large-scale projects. Also this morning, and at the City Council direction, we will introduce a draft of a modified community services grant funding program, as well as a red line of some language adjustments, cleanup to our existing budget policies, and the introduction of a brand-new policy requested by the City Council labeled Capital Improvement Project Financing and Debt Management. Hard copies of both are left in front of you for reference and will be covered later in the presentation. Madam Mayor, as your city manager, I am incredibly proud of how our city continues to find the delicate balance of investing in quality of life and not overextending itself. I'm incredibly proud of our mindset of public services directed toward the residents, businesses, and the nonprofits that make up our community. I'm incredibly proud of the City Council guidance and support and the fiscal discipline exercise that positions our city in such a positive light. And lastly, I'm incredibly proud of our employees, the workforce. They represent the machine that allows us to fulfill the policy direction of the Temecula City Council. Today, our agenda, our executive staff representing the exceptional efforts of their respective departments. They will discuss the city's strategic planning efforts. They will walk you through the budget process and provide the highlights of the annual operating and capital improvement program budgets. As you will see throughout today's presentation, the city's financial position remains healthy, with all funds balanced, all reserves fully funded. While we are fiscally balanced for the next 5 years, we will also spotlight some concerning trends on the horizon, and we'll be discussing actions that we've taken to begin to address these concerns. Assistant City Manager Luke Watson will now walk us through some of the city's strategic planning efforts to date.
Thank you, Aaron. Strategic planning is foundational in the city's planning efforts to ensure that the priorities of the City Council and the community remain at the forefront and are reflected in the city's operating budget and capital improvement program. Projects and program proposed in the budget and CIP are consistent with the city's core values identified in the Quality of Life Master Plan, or the QLMP, which was recently updated in 2022. The QLMP identifies the city's 7 core values, including healthy and livable city, economic prosperity, safe and prepared community, sustainable and resilient city, transportation, mobility, and connectivity, accountable and responsive city government, and the newest additional core value of equity. Throughout the budget and CIP documents, all projects, programs, objectives, and performance measures link back to these 7 core values to ensure we are delivering on the priorities outlined by the council and the community. The Long Range Planning Division has developed a 4-phase, multi-year process to update the general plan. Phase 1 is complete and included updates to the housing and public safety elements. Phase 2 is complete and included the updated QLMP and technical studies for the future climate action plan. Phase 3 is also complete and included the updated complete street policy and fiscal land use study to analyze the city's remaining development capacity and market absorption potential for residential, commercial, and industrial development. The final phase is to work with the General Plan Advisory Committee to update the general plan, circulation element, and environmental impact report, or EIR, over a 2-year time frame. In December 2022, the council approved a multi-year strategy to pay down the city's debt and unfunded liabilities with an original 7-year timeline goal. To date, the Margarita Recreation Center and Civic Center loans have been paid in full, creating an annual savings of $2.2 million. The city's OPEB, or retiree health liability, has also been paid in full. And in July, we will make a $9.3 million payment towards the city's pension to completely pay off the unfunded liability. I'm pleased to say that we'll be completely debt-free by July 2026, 2 months from now. Have saved over $47.7 million in interest costs and generated nearly $6 million in annual operating savings. And we did it in just 5 years. While this is an incredible achievement and very few cities have a fully funded pension, it is important to remember that CalPERS recalculates our pension liabilities each year. That is why we are also proposing a new budget policy to address future liabilities and create a sustainable model to remain 100% funded. As mentioned in Aaron's intro, the city prides itself on fiscal stewardship and the ability to take the necessary measures to ensure long-term financial solvency. This year is no different. As part of our budget process, a 5-year projection is prepared and presented in the budget document. And while we are fiscally balanced all 5 years, you will see that the gap between revenues and expenditures is closing. Over the past 2 decades, the city has implemented several strategic fiscal measures to ensure long-term financial solvency, as listed here. To better understand the trends before us, last year we extrapolated our long-term fiscal plan over a 10-year period. While this 10-year plan is filled with many assumptions, its main purpose is to provide us a planning tool so we can model the long-term impacts of decisions made now. The sooner course corrections are made, the better the fiscal outlook becomes. This time last year, we daylighted a looming structural deficit anticipated in year 7 of a 10-year plan. To begin addressing this deficit and course correct, this past year, we have worked closely with the Strategic Fiscal Services Ad Hoc Subcommittee to begin to develop a TCSD fiscal work plan, which has yielded over $1.8 million in annual budgetary savings. Additionally, departments were held to keep their non-salary budget requests flat compared to the prior year, and recommended personnel requests were largely limited to those that generate budgetary savings. With these strategic measures combined with the accelerated paydown of the city's pension liability, the looming deficit has shifted out to year 9, as shown in the chart. This multi-year plan will continue this next fiscal year and build upon the incredible job TCSD has done to start bending the curve and ensuring ongoing fiscal solvency. Director of Finance Jennifer Hennessy will now walk us through the budget process and the general fund proposed budget.
Thank you, Luke. Good morning, Mayor, City Council members. The budget process begins each year in January with a review of the current year's budget and the development of revenue projections and the preliminary 5-year forecast, which serves as the baseline budget for the ensuing fiscal year. In early February, staff held operating budget and CIP kickoff meetings with all departments. Additionally, staff presented council the mid-year budget update, which reflects an updated fiscal outlook for the current year's budget. Starting in March, staff held budget engagement sessions with the city's Planning Commission and Old Town Local Advisory Committee to obtain feedback on community priorities. In April, staff conducts several internal review meetings which culminate in the development of the proposed budget and capital improvement program being presented today. Any changes to the proposed budget and CIP that come from our discussions today will be incorporated in the final operating and capital budgets that will be on the council agenda on June 9th. Also in June, the final adopted budget and CIP documents are printed and distributed, as well as posted online for electronic viewing. The general fund serves as the city's primary operating fund and provides the funding required to deliver public safety, public works, community development, and administrative services to the city of Temecula. General fund revenue is projected to reach $126 million, with sales tax contributing 38% of total revenue. Expenditures are projected to be $112 million next fiscal year. Transfers to other funds include a $1 million repayment to the Fire Facility Acquisition Fund, which advanced $5 million to the general fund to accelerate the paydown of the pension liability. To close out the city's debt liability paydown strategy, Aaron mentioned previously, $9.3 million in available general fund balance will pay off the unfunded pension liability. And to ensure the sustainability of our debt paydown, a $7.5 million deposit into the pension trust is proposed to address any future pension liabilities. Total general fund expenditures are projected to increase by 8% to $112 million, of which 58% is dedicated to public safety. Public Works makes up 19% of the general fund and is expected to increase 0.7% due primarily to savings in the CIP Administration Division, which is offsetting the majority of other increases. City Administration makes up 15% and is expected to decrease by 1.3%, mostly due to pension savings. And Community Development, which makes up 8% of the general fund, is also expected to decrease by 0.1%, again due to pension savings. The non-departmental category includes payments for the annual retiree medical contribution, the PERS replacement benefit, and continuity staffing. I will now turn the presentation over to Captain Mark Regali, who will walk you through the Sheriff's Office budget.
Thank you, Jennifer, and good morning. The Riverside County Sheriff's Office budget of $51.4 million reflects an 8% increase over the prior year. Of that 8%, 7.5% is due to the increase in the sheriff's contract rate, reflecting labor agreements negotiated between the Riverside Sheriff's Association and the Riverside County Board of Supervisors. Additionally, the budget includes the replacement of 2 sheriff's motorcycles to support the dedicated motor deputies assigned to traffic enforcement. Staffing levels provided by the contract total 117 sworn deputy sheriffs and 18 community service officers, exceeding the target staffing ratio of 1 sworn deputy per 1,000 residents. The city contracts with the Riverside County Sheriff's Office to provide comprehensive law enforcement services, including dedicated sworn personnel assigned to command staff and specialized enforcement teams focused on addressing the unique public safety needs of our city. Among these specialized units is a robbery burglary suppression team, which continues to play an important role in reducing crime and enhancing public safety throughout our city. This highly focused team consists of 1 sergeant, an investigator, 1 corporal, 2 deputies, and 1 community service officer, all dedicated to identifying, investigating, and apprehending individuals responsible for residential and commercial burglaries and robberies within the city of Temecula. Through proactive enforcement efforts, intelligence-driven investigations, and close coordination with patrol personnel and regional law enforcement partners, the team continues to target repeat offenders and emerging crime trends impacting the community. Our Metro team plays a critical role in maintaining safety and enhancing the visitor experience in Old Town Temecula by providing more than 20,000 hours of dedicated law enforcement service annually. Operating from the centrally located Old Town Temecula Sheriff's Substation, the team has improved response times to calls for service and increased visible patrol presence throughout the district by beginning and ending their shifts directly in Old Town. Comprised of dedicated deputies focused exclusively on the Old Town area, the Metro team works closely with business owners, employees, residents, and visitors to foster strong community relationships while providing an enhanced level of service and engagement. Through high visibility patrols, proactive enforcement, and a zero-tolerance approach to criminal activity, the team continues to support a safe and welcoming environment within one of the city's most active entertainment and tourism districts. The CORE team, or Community Outreach, Resource, and Engagement team, now operates out of offices formerly occupied by the Temecula Visitor Center, which is now connected to the Old Town Temecula Sheriff's Substation, further enhancing accessibility and collaboration with city departments and community partners. Corps deputies play a vital role in improving the quality of life throughout the city by combining proactive enforcement, outreach, and long-term problem-solving strategies. Working closely with code enforcement, building and safety, TCSD, information technology, the fire department, behavioral health professionals, and local service providers, the team helps address ongoing and varied community concerns while also connecting individuals and families with available resources and services. CORE also remains heavily involved in the planning and coordination of public safety operations for the city's major special events, including the Rod Run, the 4th of July celebration, and the Christmas Parade. In addition to these specialized teams, the city also contracts for deputies assigned to our special enforcement team, school resource deputies, mall deputies, and a dedicated traffic team, all of which play an important role in maintaining public safety, traffic enforcement, community engagement, and proactive crime suppression throughout the city. Sheriff's Office is also working with city staff to establish the city's false alarm reduction program. Staff is evaluating a third-party administrative service that would provide an online permit and billing system, improve tracking and reporting, and help recover a portion of the cost associated with excessive false alarm responses. This effort is intended to reduce unnecessary calls for service and improve deputy availability for higher priority public safety needs. The city receives approximately 4,500 alarm calls each year, and the majority are believed to be false alarms, making this an important opportunity to improve both operational efficiency for the Sheriff's Office and for the city alike. I will now turn the presentation over to Fire Chief John Crater to present the fire budget.
Thank you, Chief Fergali. The fire department budget for next year is projected to be $27.1 million, with a structure fire tax credit of $13.4 million deducted by the county. The net cost to the city is $13.6 million, which is a 7.7% increase over this period last year. The budget includes 4-person staffing for our fire engines and ladder truck, with a total of 79 fire personnel. The fire department will continue to meet its Cal OSHA requirement of 2 in, 2 out for firefighter safety during structure fires, and served as pivotal in our ISO rating of 2, which places the city of Temecula in the top 7% nationwide for structure fire suppression capabilities. The newly formed Fire Safe Council is currently in development phases, with an advisory board chosen to shape the council's foundation, build the council itself, develop a 501(c) so that the council is capable of becoming self-sufficient as an organization and able to plan community-managed wildfire protection programs, and the ability to request grant funding to accomplish their objectives. Emergency management budget for next year is projected to be $924,000. The budget includes development of community resilient strategies and trainings, support for 43 TCC, Temecula Citizen Corps personnel, disaster preparedness, which includes an alternative operations center at the Temecula Library, with upgrades to technology, development and citywide mass emergency plan, and the state requirement to provide animal sheltering in an emergency event. I'll turn this back over to Jennifer Hennessy to finish up the general fund section of the presentation.
All right, thanks, Chief. In addition to the safety departments, the general fund also includes the public works, community development, and administration departments, which has a combined budget of $47.4 million. Reflected in these departmental budgets are the costs associated with the 3% cost of living adjustment, 20 reclassified positions, 1 new project intern position, and 7 new part-time project custodians to take over janitorial services, which will save the city $83,000 per year. Recommended capital outlay purchases include an emergency management trailer to meet a government code requirement to provide sheltering for animals, as well as 8 Meridian barricades to use for events and other crowd control purposes. Finally, the budget reflects increased funding for the Community Services Grant Program, and the City Manager's Office is currently reviewing the funding policies and has provided you redline copies for your consideration. The ending fund balance for the general fund is projected to be $29.75 million next fiscal year. Reserves are fully funded at $28 million, and after deducting for future commitments, the available fund balance is projected to be just over $1.1 million for one-time appropriations or the pay down of debt per our budget policies. Measure S is the 1-cent transactions and use tax approved by Temecula voters in November of 2016, and this revenue source became effective in April of 2017 and has generated nearly $275 million in revenue. Measure S is technically considered a general fund revenue, however, we account for it in a separate fund to maximize transparency. Fiscal year 26-27 Measure S revenue is expected to increase by 3.5% over the prior year to $40.7 million. Total appropriations are budgeted at $48 million and are in line with Council's policy guidelines prioritizing public safety, asset management, capital projects, and community services. Public safety funding of $24 million is recommended to augment the sheriff and fire department operations by providing funding for 11 sheriff's deputies, fire station 95 staffing, the future replacement of the fire ladder truck and inspection vehicles, and general support for public safety activities. Asset management funding of $3.5 million includes the $1 million deposit into the streets maintenance fund and a $2.5 million deposit into the facility replacement fund to ensure adequate funds are available to maintain the city's infrastructure and facilities. Capital project investments for 26-27 total $4.3 million from Measure S, which will add to the $32.7 million allocated in the current fiscal year to fund 71 separate capital projects. And general and community services funding totals $16.5 million, which is primarily dedicated to TCSD operations and library funding. And with the TCSD fiscal work plan, the reliance on Measure S funds have decreased by $2.7 million from last year's proposed budget. I'll now turn the presentation over to Interim Director of Human Resources and Risk Management, Becky Obman.
Thank you, Jennifer. Along with the budget adoption in June, a separate agenda item, including a resolution approving the schedule of authorized positions and salary schedule, will be presented to the City Council. The salary schedule reflects the 3% cost of living adjustments per the agreement with Teamsters Local 986. Base salary adjustment for all employees will become effective the first pay period in fiscal year 26-27. Total authorized positions for fiscal year 26-27 will remain flat at 202.2 full-time equivalent positions, including the 5 council members and 6 authorized but unfunded positions, 5 of which are in TCSD and 1 in planning. In addition, 20 employee positions are being reclassified to better align job classifications with duties and responsibilities, operational needs, and organizational structure. To complement the authorized staffing, the city also employs a total of 88 full-time equivalent part-time project positions in a variety of seasonal and support roles. 5 additional limited-term positions are employed to support the implementation of the city's new HR payroll system, which reflects 1 position removed since the preparation of the proposed budget. Staffing for the Sheriff's Office and Fire Department is provided through contracts with Riverside County and CAL FIRE. Sheriff staffing includes 117 sworn deputies and 18 community service officers. Fire staffing includes 79 fire personnel and will continue to provide 4-person staffing on each engine and ladder truck. I will now turn the presentation over to the Director of Community Services, Erica Russo, who will walk you through the TCSD operations budget.
Thank you, Becky. Good morning, Mayor, City Council. The mission of TCSD is to improve Temecula's quality of life through our facilities, programs, services, and events. We strive to ensure that everything we do makes our community a healthy, safe, connected, and ultimately desirable place to live, work, and play. We like to call this creating community through people, parks, and programs. And 91% of respondents to the most recent community satisfaction survey said they were either satisfied or very satisfied with this effort. Because the cost to deliver such extensive programming and amenities is substantial, we constantly evaluate the cost-to-benefit balance and look for opportunities for cost savings and recovery. Let's take a quick look at what TCSD includes. TCSD can be thought of as having 3 main subdivisions: recreation, arts and culture, and human services, all supported by an administrative division that handles budgets, contracts, grants, departmental policies and procedures, and procurement. Recreation includes the classic Parks and Rec divisions like aquatics, sports, classes, recreation centers, parks, rentals, and events. Arts and culture includes our theater, museum, art exhibits, library, and the Sister City program. Human services, broadly speaking, encompasses our inclusive and senior services and related facilities, workforce and education development programs, and homeless outreach and prevention. There's some overlap between categories, particularly at the library, which increasingly fills an important role in helping the community access services. Nevertheless, these 3 big groupings can be a useful way to think of what TCSD does for the community. This slide shows some of the net costs of operating these divisions, factoring in staffing, operations cost, and any offsetting revenue. TCSD welcomes residents and visitors of all ages into 10 facilities, shown here with blue stars, ranging from full-service recreation centers like the 26,000 square foot Ronald J. Parks Community Recreation Center and the Intergenerational Margarita Recreation Center, down to the 1-room Harveston Community Classroom. Temecula also is fortunate to have the largest and busiest library in the county. With an annual operating budget of approximately $1.8 million, the Ronald H. Roberts Temecula Public Library is a popular hub for the entire community. Our 2 year-round pools provide swim instruction, fitness classes, and water safety instruction to all ages and abilities, at an annual program cost of $2.5 million. All of TCSD's facilities cost approximately $1.8 million each year to maintain. Temecula's investment in creating and maintaining active and passive parks contributes to the city's overall livability, positively impacting the community's mental and physical well-being as well as its aesthetics. The city's 42 beautifully maintained parks, shown here with green pins, have an annual maintenance cost of approximately $6.6 million. Some of our amenities include 2 lake parks, 2 premier sports parks, 4 pump tracks, 2 hockey rinks, including the one at Ronald Reagan Sports Park, which has recently been completely renovated with new sport court surfacing and a roof, the 17-court pickleball complex at Ronald Reagan Sports Park, and a soon-to-be-completed 8 pickleball court project at Nagar Park, a skate plaza at Long Canyon Creek Park, and the complete redesign of the skate park at Ronald Reagan Sports Park, which is currently underway. Also 2 splash pads, while the Eagle Soar splash pad located at Nagar Park is temporarily closed for major repairs and will open later this year. Signature special events like the Rod Run, the 4th of July Spectacular at Ronald Reagan Sports Park, Santa's Electric Light Parade, and New Year's Eve Grape Drop help define Temecula's regional and even national reputation and create a unique sense of place. Our professional and hardworking special events team produces over 40 special events each year at a total annual cost of approximately $1.1 million. We recently hosted Southern California's premier car show, the Temecula Rod Run, which brought over 60,000 people to Old Town over the 2-day event. Events like these require extensive staff support from community services as well as public works and public safety teams, and contract services to provide rental equipment and traffic control. As part of our commitment to seeking cost savings, this year we adjusted staffing at the Rod Run on the Show and Shine Day to save approximately $39,000 in staffing costs. Since it opened in 2005, our 353-seat theater has entertained residents and visitors alike with high-quality programming ranging from local community musical theater and youth performances to traveling world-class performers of many genres. This year, a recommended $358,000 allocation to the Facility Replacement Fund will permit the replacement of the facility's original audio system, ensuring the sound quality remains state-of-the-art. Homelessness is one of the most pressing issues affecting communities across the country, and the city dedicates approximately $1.6 million, not including public safety costs, to mitigating the impacts of homelessness on individuals, businesses, and residents. Through collaborations with partners such as Social Work Action Group, Mission Hope, RSO's core and community behavioral assessment teams, and neighboring agencies, city staff in multiple departments have been able to create a framework of support and accountability, which helped 101 individuals exit the streets last year. Additionally, the city removed 142 dangerous and unhealthy encampments in 2025, due in part to the city's recent commitment to mitigating encampments on private property which pose a significant threat to public health and safety, including the risk of fire. Additionally, staff administered the Flexible Family Assistance Program made possible by Council's appropriation of $140,000 to help address the lack of rapid rehousing options for families with minor children. Through that allocation and last year's CDBG Public Services allocation of $10,000 for homelessness prevention and diversion, we prevented or ended homelessness for 120 individuals in 2025, including 65 children, all of whom were verified residents of Temecula. For the 2026-27 fiscal year, staff is proposing a realignment of homelessness-related resources. On May 26th, we will bring an agreement with the Temecula nonprofit Mission Hope before the council. That agreement proposes a partnership in which Mission Hope will utilize its staffing, experience, and supplemental resources to administer the city's family bridge housing, flexible family assistance, and emergency shelter funds, as well as provide housing navigation, case management, and wraparound services to Temecula clients. The cost of this contract, a total of $350,000, will be offset by $79,000 in CDBG Public Services funding. The remaining $271,000 will be absorbed within TCSD's existing annual operating budget through other contract savings. This realignment will increase staff capacity to focus on alternative funding opportunities such as grants and sponsorships while leveraging Mission Hope's expertise and resources to address one of our most pressing concerns. For the next fiscal year, the TCSD budget reflects revenue totaling $19.7 million. Program revenue, which includes the income from contract classes, registration fees, day camp, aquatics, rentals, and theater tickets, is projected to be $3 million. Measure C, which is the $74.44 parcel tax dedicated to park programs and maintenance, is expected to be $2 million, and the Measure S contribution of $14.7 million provides the remaining revenue necessary to cover TCSD's wide-ranging services and programs. Operating expenditures of $19.7 million are decreasing by 4.2%, primarily due to vacant positions and decreased internal service fund allocations. As part of the TCSD fiscal work plan City Manager Adams mentioned earlier, staffing vacancies in TCSD, which have arisen over the past year from retirements, resignations, and terminations, have not been backfilled. To date, this attrition has resulted in 5 authorized vacancies and 15 project position vacancies. This translates into a projected savings for fiscal year 26-27 of approximately $1.8 million. Additionally, staff has looked for the least impactful changes in programming to help absorb these vacancies, including eliminating, combining, or downsizing events and programs. As one example, we discontinued summer swim at Chaparral High School, and we were able to offset partially by increasing lessons at the CRC and MRC pools. We also continue to look for other opportunities for cost savings and revenue generation, including reducing program costs where possible and pursuing grants and sponsorships. I will now turn the presentation over to Director of Public Works, Ron Moreno, to walk you through the city's capital improvement program budget.
Thank you, Erica. Good morning. The Capital Improvement Program is a comprehensive 5-year plan that addresses the city's capital needs. Capital projects are those that cost over $30,000, have long-term lifespans, and are generally non-recurring. The fiscal years 2027 to 31 CIP includes 94 separate projects with total costs of over $916 million. The city has secured funding sources totaling $634 million, or 69% of the total CIP. The remaining $283 million is unspecified at this time. However, before construction begins on any of these projects, a funding source will be identified. Between the current year and the next fiscal year, it is anticipated that CIP spending will exceed $192 million. After extensive review, CIP projects have been reprioritized to ensure funding is available for several high-profile projects approved at the CIP workshop held last November. This slide illustrates the city's significant efforts to leverage external funding sources, which have yielded tremendous results in recent years. Local funding sources contribute roughly 36% of the total CIP funding, with outside sources such as federal and state grants, Riverside County's transportation uniform mitigation fees, and Measure A, as well as other specific funding sources, making up the remaining 64% of total CIP funding. CIP includes 4 new projects this year. The Civic Center HVAC system upgrade. This project upgrades the HVAC units that have become increasingly unreliable and expensive to maintain due to age. The CRC pool cantilever reconstruction. This project addresses the deterioration of the concrete pool deck. The project is in the scoping phase to determine an appropriate repair approach. The Ronald Reagan Sports Park Trail, which Community Development Director Matt Peters will describe in more detail later in the presentation. The Long Canyon Creek Park to Yanez Trail. This off-street route would connect James Day Middle School and Long Canyon Creek Park on North General Kearney Road to the Promenade Temecula and an employment center to the west. The route includes crosswalks at the Promenade Way Overland Drive intersection, as well as a crossing of Margaret Road at Georgetown Lane. This project is currently in the scoping phase, and it is part of the city's trail master plan. The circulation category contains 19 separate projects totaling $659 million in project costs. Mercedes Street sidewalks. The project will construct the missing segment of sidewalks on the west side of Mercedes Street between Main Street and a point approximately 160 feet south of 3rd Street. The project will also construct crosswalks at 3rd Street and a potential mid-block crosswalk at the southern limit of the project to the parking structure. The project is in the design phase, and construction is anticipated to start mid-2027. The Diaz Road expansion project includes widening and improvements of Diaz Road between Rancho California Road and Winchester Road, followed by the final phase between Winchester and the northern city boundary. Diaz Road will be the northern extension of the Puesca Mountain Parkway, formerly known as the Western Bypass. The current funding plan includes recent federal grant funding in the amount of $2 million earmarked by Congressman Darrell Issa for it. The project is in the final design, environmental permitting, and right-of-way acquisition phases. Construction is expected to start in 2028. French Valley Parkway Phase 3. The project is in the third of 4 phases comprising the I-15 French Valley Parkway improvements. The project proposes to construct the full width of French Valley Parkway between Jefferson Avenue and Yanez Road, including the bridge overcrossing of I-15 and connecting on-ramps to the northbound collector-distributor CD system constructed in Phase 2. The project is in the design, environmental, and right-of-way acquisition phase. Construction is expected to start in 2030, contingent upon available funding. As part of Flood Control's Murrieta Creek improvements, the phase known as 2B is currently under construction. However, it had to be rescoped due to increased costs. The project has now been downsized to extend from Rancho California Road only to Via Montezuma. This will affect the city's Diaz Road expansion project, the Murrieta Creek Bridge project, and Overland Drive widening, as well as the detention basin uptown Temecula Sports Park that we have had planned. Impacts include drainage and structural modifications that will need to be analyzed, since the full improvements will not extend to Winchester Road at this time. The Murrieta Creek Bridge at Overland, another project that leverages a significant amount of grant funding. This bridge will connect Overland Drive from Enterprise Circle on the east side of Murrieta Creek to Diaz Road at Avenida Alvarado on the west side. Approximately 88% of participating costs are grant funded. The project is in the final design and environmental permitting phases, and construction is anticipated to start in 2028. Overland Drive widening. This project will widen the roadway from Commerce Center to Jefferson and will alleviate the existing bottleneck of traffic attempting to travel from eastbound Overland to northbound Jefferson. The project complements the prior Overland widening project, which was Enterprise to Commerce, and the Overland Bridge project. Congressman Issa has requested $3.5 million in federal funding through the congressionally directed spending program to help offset the cost of construction and right-of-way acquisitions associated with the project. The project is in the design, environmental permitting, and right-of-way acquisition phases. Construction is anticipated to start in late 2027. Pavement rehabilitation projects reflect the continuation of efforts to maintain the quality of the city's roadway system, one of our largest assets. We have over $8.5 million in pavement rehab projects planned over 2 years. Paba Road Pavement Rehabilitation Project will rehabilitate approximately 1.4 centerline miles of roadway along Paba Road between Margarita and Yanez Road. The project will consist of grinding and placing new asphalt concrete materials and upgrading and reconstructing 19 ADA curb ramps. The project is in the construction contract award phase, and construction is expected to start in mid-2026. Meadows Parkway Pavement Rehabilitation Project will rehabilitate approximately 2.5 centerline miles of roadway along Meadows Parkway between Temecula Parkway and Rancho California Road. The project will consist of grinding and placing new asphalt concrete materials and upgrading and reconstructing 46 ADA curb ramps. The project is in the design phase, and construction is expected to start in early mid-2027. Rancho Vista Road Pavement Rehabilitation Project will rehabilitate approximately 1.4 centerline miles of roadway along Rancho Vista Road between Yanez and Margarita Road. The project will consist of grinding and placing new asphalt concrete materials and upgrading, reconstructing 21 ADA curb ramps. The project is in the scoping phase, and construction is expected to start in early mid-2028. Major slurry seal projects for 26-27 include concentrated slurry sealing efforts in 3 parts of the city, totaling over 6.15 million square feet of pavement rehabilitation. The project is in the design phase, and construction, which is weather sensitive, is expected to start in mid-2026. The project covers the following areas: Area of Work 1, Harveston; Area of Work 2, Wolf Creek; Area of Work 3, Green Tree Road, which was a single road that went from private to city maintained recently; and Area of Work 3, Vintage Hills. All work areas were identified utilizing our city's pavement management system, which identifies the city's roadway pavement condition index, or in other words, the PCI. A new roundabout is proposed at the intersection of De Portola and Jedediah Smith, which will utilize $800,000 in federal grant funding from the Economic Development Initiative. La Paz Road Roundabout reconstruction. The project includes redesign and reconstruction of the existing roundabout on Yanez Road at the intersection of La Paz Road. The improvements will modify and reconstruct the roundabout, entry medians, landscaping, lighting, and overall alignment of the existing roundabout. The project is in the design phase, and construction is expected to start in 2027. Yanez Road Phase 1. The project includes widening between Tierra Vista, which is the Duck Pond entrance, and Rancho Vista Road, including funding from the Arrive residential project recently constructed. The project is in final design, environmental permitting, and right-of-way acquisition phase. Construction is anticipated to start in late 2026, early 2027, contingent upon the right-of-way acquisition process. Staff is proposing a new capital project be added in the final budget at the intersection of Margarita and Winchester Road to address the asphalt that has deteriorated drastically over the last few years. The scope of work would include milling the top 3 inches of asphalt, applying tack coat, 19,000 square feet of repavement, and restriping of all crosswalks, limit lines, and cat tracks in thermoplastic material. Community Facilities District, or CFD bond-funded projects, include those funded with a combination of CFD bonds and developer contributions. The Butterfield Stage Road extension between Murrieta Hot Springs and Rancho California Road is essentially complete, absent the slope landscaping. Nicholas Road extension and improvements, starting construction between Calle Girasol and Butterfield Stage Road, includes over $14 million in CFD funding, with the remaining project cost to be paid by Woodside Homes, the developer of Somers Bend Development. Project construction is complete, and the grand opening was held on February 17th, 2026. Project closeout is in progress. The Parks and Recreation category includes 22 separate projects totaling $58.5 million in total project costs. The Eagle Source Splash Pad Rehabilitation. Construction has begun to replace the existing reservoir tank to maintain safe and reliable splash pad operations. Mike Nagar Pickleball Court Conversion. Full renovation of the existing court surfacing for a total of 8 new permanent pickleball courts. Santiago Community Garden. In the fall of 2025, during the CIP workshop, Council gave direction to add seed funding for the design of this new amenity on existing city-owned parcel located at the southwest corner of Santiago Road and Yanez Road. Pending the outcome of the general plan update, we recommend keeping this project in the CIP. Uptown Temecula Sports Park. As part of the project reprioritization exercise, funding was identified for this still partially funded project, and $9.5 million in funding remains unspecified at this time. Playground equipment enhancements for fiscal year 26-27 will complete the planned $350,000 allocation at Paseo Gallente Park, emphasizing updated play equipment, upgraded safety surfacing, and an enhanced overall user experience. Staff will also prepare budget estimates for the installation of fitness equipment rather than traditional playground at Loma Linda Park B. This alternative approach is projected to cost approximately $120,000 and may result in cost savings for the projects if combined. Combining phases 1 and 2 of the Ronald Reagan Sports Park playground renovation in fiscal years 27-28 may further generate cost efficiencies through consolidated mobilization and construction activities. Staff will also determine the additional allocation required to deliver both phases as a single integrated project, ensuring alignment with capital planning objectives. The infrastructure category includes 47 separate projects totaling $114 million in total project costs. Fire Station 73, Gym and Garage, will add a new gym structure as well as an apparatus bay. Design phase is nearly complete and construction is expected to start in late 2026. Fire Station 84 renovation, a new wellness room as well as interior renovations to the living space and training room will be constructed at Fire Station 84. Construction is underway with completion expected in late 2026. Civic Center lobby enhancements, formerly City Facility Security. New security enhancements will be implemented for the receptionist area. An RFP is being prepared for posting for engineering services. At this time, I'd like to turn the presentation over to the Director of Community Development, Matt Peters, who will discuss the remaining infrastructure projects and the city's affordable housing projects.
Thank you, Ron. The Citywide Community Wildfire Protection Plan, or CWPP, request for proposals is scheduled for release on June 1st, 2026. This expands the existing CWPP of 177 acres at the confluence of the Santa Margarita River to the entire city with an additional 2-mile buffer to help expedite border agency projects. Consultant proposals will be reviewed and interviews will be conducted in July with a tentative award date by the City Council on August 25th, 2026. The Old Town Wayfinding Signs project is funded as part of the Community Reinvestment Program. The project design has been presented to and supported by the City Council Old Town Steering Committee and the Old Town Local Advisory Committee. The project is currently being scheduled for review at an upcoming Planning Commission meeting, followed by a City Council meeting. The Ronald Reagan Sports Park Trail is a new CIP to expand upon the first phase vegetation trimming project being completed within the open space portion of the park to implement fuel modification and trail access. This second phase will include design for erosion control and the construction of 3 trail bridges. The City of Temecula serves as the housing successor agency to the redevelopment agency and is responsible for the investment of $16 million in housing bond proceeds to the former RDA. Utilizing this dedicated funding source, the City Council has approved funding agreements for 2 developments which will provide an additional 137 affordable units. First, the Las Haciendas development, located in the Uptown Temecula Specific Plan area, which was recently completed, provides for 77 multifamily affordable units. Second, the Vine Creek development is located at the corner of Pujol and Main Street and provides 60 affordable housing units, 12 of which are set aside for residents with special needs. Following the city's $4 million community reinvestment program funding allocation toward the project, the developer successfully secured tax credit financing, allowing the project to become fully funded. The project is now complete, and the grand opening took place on April 21st, and all units are currently occupied. In addition, the CIP includes a new project partnering with Habitat for Humanity on a third Habitat-led affordable development that will include 6 for-sale, owner-occupied townhomes available to low-income families and individuals. This project will give the city a relatively rare opportunity to add another affordable for-sale homeownership opportunity to the city's affordable housing inventory. The city recently utilized affordable housing bond funds to acquire a vacant site in the Uptown Temecula Specific Plan area. In addition to the property itself, the City Council allocated $1 million in CRP funds, which are to be contributed directly to the project. The City Council recently approved a resolution to increase the size of the footprint for this site and to declare the property exempt from the Surplus Land Act as it is proposed to be used for affordable housing. Once the exemption is approved by the Department of Housing and Community Development, staff will reissue the RFP to developers with a target for submittals in early fall. The Serafina Private Development Project, now known as the Oak Creek Development, is a unique project because it is a market-rate tract home development utilizing density bonus provisions that allow the developer to obtain concessions and waivers from certain development standards. In return, the project will provide 6 affordable for-sale homes set aside for families earning very low area median income, helping to expand affordable home ownership opportunities within the city. I will now turn the presentation back over to the Finance Director to discuss budget policy changes.
All right, thanks, Matt. As the city manager mentioned in his opening remarks, we have provided you draft copies of several new budget policies for consideration this year. The first is the Capital Financing and Debt Management Policy. This policy has been expanded to include new policy goals, criteria to be considered before approving new general fund debt, and a section on arbitrage rebate compliance. Next is a new policy that codifies the desired timing of the city's cost allocation plan and user fee study updates, which council recommended previously to be every 3 to 5 years. The city is currently in the process of updating the cost allocation plan, and the user fee study will soon follow. With the final payment of the debt liability paydown strategy in July, we will now turn to the sustainability efforts to remain 100% funded in the city's pension. It's recommended to utilize the pension trust as a reserve for future pension liabilities that may arise when CalPERS recalculates the city's funded status each year. This new policy includes a target funding level of $10 million for the trust, as well as funding mechanisms to build that reserve. Also included are the recommended hierarchy of eligible uses of the trust funds. Similar to the pension funding policy, we are recommending to add a policy to address the funding of the city's retiree health benefit program. Currently funded at 120%, this new policy will address the uses of these funds and how to replenish the trust if the funded status drops below 100%. And finally, we're recommending the removal of the debt liability paydown strategy policy, as we have achieved the objectives by paying off all city liabilities and are currently debt-free. I'll now turn the presentation over to the city manager to cover the future discussion items.
Thanks, Jen. As you've heard this morning, the city has much to be proud of and has a substantial list of programs and projects that are underway. While the budget concentrates mostly on the next fiscal year, we also remain forward-looking and strategically plan for impacts to future budgets as well. I have a list of several items I would like to seek direction from the City Council this morning after we have proper time for Q&A from the Council. Some of these items include the following: one-time contribution towards the MSJC Endowment Fund, library feasibility study, the Community Services Grant Program towards nonprofits, budget policies that Jen mentioned, Station 84, Large American Flag Capital Outlay at Ronald Reagan Sports Park, and City Council Discretionary Grant Program. As you've heard throughout the presentation, the success and the prosperity that Temecula enjoys is not by accident, and actually it's very intentional. Are we positioned well? Yes. Are there things that we must be mindful of in the future? Yes. It would be my hope the City Council can take great pride in supporting these key investments in our community for the next 12 months, yet also be encouraged the future remains bright and the planning remains strong. The workforce is poised and ready, and as always, we continue to monitor closely our local economic conditions for major fluctuations that may affect our projected revenues and our expenditures. I want to give a special thanks to the entire executive staff, department budget analysts, and our finance budget team, including Director Jennifer Hennessy, Assistant Director Ward Comers, Fiscal Services Manager Paula Majors, and Budget Manager Catlin Dorsett, all of whom represent the Temecula way. And as always, an extra special shout out to our media services team of Jonathan Hall and Chris Dreer. You guys are invaluable. Once again, you partnered with us on this presentation today. This concludes our presentation this morning, Madam Mayor, members of the council, and we are available for any questions that you might have.
All right, outstanding. Well, first, I just want to say thank you to all the staff for all the time. I know it's been quite a while trying to put all this together. It's been great work. I know we've been able to meet all of us with you, and so just thank you for the great work. Thank you for the continuation of the vision as we are moving forward. So that being said, I would like to open this up to the council to start comments on what we've seen so far, and then we'll go into discussion with the city managers, with our proposals from the city manager coming down of how we'd like to move forward. So does anybody have anything on the first part of the meeting? Anybody want to start?
I can start us off.
Yes, sir.
Well, first, I think the presentation and Temecula being debt-free in July really deserves a slow clap, standing ovation. But it doesn't sound like that will happen usually with governments. But being stewards of taxpayer dollars is extremely important. I think Temecula leads the way for that. So kudos to staff and council and previous staff and previous councils for allowing the foundation of what Temecula is and what it will continue to be to happen. So I mean, that presentation just shows how amazing Temecula has been with taxpayer dollars and continuing to do so. You know, we're looking out 10 years now, and we're already looking at, hey, if we're coming to a point where we need to look at things, we're looking at them now, not in 5 years, not in 10 years. We're looking out 10 years today, which is very important. So again, thank you for allowing us to be and work in a city that is such good stewards of the taxpayer dollars. That's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Yeah, I would just like to build off Councilmember Kalfas' comments. So thank you certainly for the presentation, all the hard work that's gone into this. I know this starts way back in January. This being my 8th budget workshop, when you come onto council, you sort of watch previous council's work, and you're going to know what you're getting into. And staying the course, I think, is like one of the most important things that we've like collectively done. Yeah, so to think about, a world where we're completely debt-free, where we're balanced, we're using public dollars really, really well. We're very strategic. We're threading the needle between, some reductions in in areas and then still providing really robust services for the community, right? Like this presentation's amazing. I think, having this in some sort of short form, which we've talked about, I'm constantly, advocating for, snippets of this, and I know our city manager's done a great job in the past on social media of like getting some of this stuff out, but there's a lot of really, really good information in there. And so, my hope is that going forward, future councils will look back to previous councils, including us, let's say, hey, they were good stewards of public dollars, and we're going to stay the course. We're going to be fiscally conservative. We're going to do good work for the community and continue that trend, regardless of who's sitting up here, right? So that's my hope, and just initial comments. But coming in today, I was thinking to myself, and I thought, I don't think we've ever been in a better fiscal situation ever. And then I asked our city manager and our assistant city manager that question, and they both agreed. I think, Aaron, you said we're in rare air, right? Like this is a place we've never been. We've been in a place where we have zero debt, fiscally balanced, doing good work. So that's not certainly a knock against past councils, right? They worked really hard to get us, to pass the baton to us, to get us here to be able to finish it. But my hope is future councils will continue to follow our lead and past council's lead and keep doing good work. So thank you.
Absolutely. No, great points. I'm going to send it all the way to the end of the right.
All right. I got a few things to say, actually. So, first off, I'll piggyback on everybody else. This whole idea of a debt-free city of 115,000 people is almost incredible to even conceive of. I mean, if you went across the entire country, you would not find another city like ours. And so but you know what? During the presentation, what struck me the most is the planning for cutting before we need to cut. That's the thing that Temecula does the best, is they see something on the horizon and they start preparing for that horizon before. So when we get there, it's not a giant hurdle we have to get over. It's just a tiny little blip we've got to, because we've already prepared for that 5 years ago, 4 years ago, 3 years ago, 2 years ago. So that's what I find incredible. And even the thought of creating a pension trust for pension obligations, that's going to be beneficial not to our city council, but for the next 3 or 4 or 10 city councils going forward. Same with the health trust, another thing that we know is escalating exponentially every year. And by creating that trust, we are literally softening the blow, the budget blow that we know will hit. So incredible forethought, city manager, finance manager. I mean, very, very forward thinking. Also, the homeless presentation, I think that goes understated in my opinion, because the amount of money that we spend and the care that we take for these people think we're just kicking them out of their encampments and we're destroying their way of life. It's like, no, we're trying to get them healthy. We're trying to get them into a situation where they can be productive members of society again. We're not just letting them be. To me, that's the wrong thing to do. And you catch a lot of crap sometimes from people who say, oh, just leave them alone. They're not hurting anybody. And it's like, no, but they're hurting themselves. So again, great presentation on the homeless. And I do want to mention one thing about the pickleball situation. I was just at ICSC and we pulled up on a data program which follows cell phone data of people using our pickleball courts. And 45% were from outside our city. So 55% were residents and 45%, and I know from personal conversation I've had with pickleball people, some are driving all the way up from San Diego to use our pickleball courts. So it's like, you know, for us to invest more money in this, is there a opportunity or even a desire for a fee use of pickleball? I mean, is there any way we could recover costs if we did pave the road? Would you be willing to pay for that service to use the pickleball courts? You know, we should look into that, because that pickleball court in particular, it's state of the art, it's beautiful. We weren't originally even going to pave the parking lot, but we did that. And so we get no credit for that because we already did it, you know? So, you know, the pickleball is becoming its own thing now. So we need to really kind of consider, is there a cost recovery? And that was another thing with TCSD. When they showed the slide, the cost recovery for TCSD was 15%, which I totally am okay with, because we're creating community and we're creating events for the community. And so that should be the burdens of the city as far as I'm concerned. So I don't have any issue with that cost recovery. But when it comes to specialty things such as pickleball, should there be a cost recovery aspect to it? So that's another thought I'd like to throw out there. And, you know, and it just, my mind just keeps going back to, we're not waiting to make cuts until we're upside down. We are constantly looking at, we're constantly evolving. We're not just sitting there doing things just because that's the way we always did it. Those are the number of people it takes. No, we constantly reevaluate. Can we do it with less? Because, you know, we see on the horizon our budget's going to get tight. So again, kudos to the whole city staff. I mean, when I saw the cuts in all the departments have already made, it was quite impressive. So thank you, guys.
No, that's great information, Stu, and I appreciate all the insight on that, because going to that ICSC, sorry, I can't see you, really was very eye-opening to be able to see how maybe we can work things a little bit differently or be able to recover some of that money. So thank you for that. Mayor Pro Tem?
All right, so I'm going to do the boring thing and talk about numbers real quick. But I think it's important to put it in the context of what the city just presented this morning. So we have roughly $1 billion total operating and capital improvement budget for a population of roughly 100,000 people, plus or minus, right? So that means we're investing about $10,000 per resident in operating and improving the city of Temecula. Now, let's put that in the context of other cities in California. Los Angeles has a $14 billion combined budget. With their population, that equates to about $3,600, about a third of what we're investing per person, with a projected deficit of $320 million this year. You know, City of San Diego, $6.42 billion budget, roughly $4,600 per resident, with a projected deficit of $118 million. Now you could say, well, I'm being disingenuous by talking about, you know, cities that are much larger and much more complex. But if you look at just the cities of Murrieta and cities of Carlsbad, they're operating at about a combined budget of 20 to 28% of what the city of Temecula is, investing far less, with very similar population sizes and infrastructure. So I think it's important to highlight that, because you know, not only are we in a position where I think, you know, if you ran those numbers across most cities in California, let alone the country, would you find a city that's in a financial position that we are? Far above any others. And then add to that the fact that we have no debt soon, you know, and no unfunded pension liabilities. I would argue that we're probably the only city that can make that claim in the state of California, and probably only a handful in the entire United States. So, you know, I can't thank folks that help with the city, and especially Miss Hennessy 12 years ago. I yelled out your name at our first budget hearing together in protest over public safety funding. But, you know, and it's kind of sad to think this is our last budget hearing together. So I'm going to spare you from yelling out your name again. But you know, you've done an amazing job for this city. Cannot thank you enough. And, you know, if we could find somebody even half as capable as you, we'll be doing great. But yeah, I just think this, you know, of the budget hearings I've been to and seen over the last 20 years or so, this one's fairly remarkable, especially in the context of what's happening with all the rest of the communities in the country. So bravo to the staff and everybody working hard on this.
All right, thank you very much, Mayor Pro Tem. I've got Councilmember Zach Schwank wants to add a little bit more, and before I make my comments, I'll open it up one more time to the rest of the council members if they have any other questions that may have popped up or statements.
Yeah, thank you very much, Madam Mayor. So I just had my initial comments, and I have some things that didn't like fit into that bucket, and they certainly don't fit into the list that our city manager talked about earlier. You know, building off Mayor Pro Tem Ron, like the Measure S funding, $275 million over 10 years. I was talking with our assistant city manager this morning, and I was like, can you imagine a world without Measure S? I kind of want to ask like ChatGPT to like model that world for us, and what does it look like? Because I can't imagine that world. And thankfully, we're not there. Voters approved it, and we've been good stewards of those dollars. You know, going through the TCSD budget, and I've been on the Fiscal Services Subcommittee, and we're looking at, you know, bending the curve and right-sizing TCSD and those things. One thing that's always sort of stuck out to me is the inclusion of homeless outreach and workforce development within the TCSD budget. And that's about $2.2 million every year, which I think unfairly burdens TCSD in the sense of, you know, we're cutting those services, but we're asking them to do things that maybe don't always fit into like the TCSD world. Now, that doesn't do anything for the overall budget, right? Those dollars still have to go somewhere. But I think it's one thing that I always think about in this perspective of, is homeless outreach a public safety? Is it community services? You know, where does it sort of land? And I think having a broader conversation about that sort of helps frame some of the cuts that we've made to TCSD and then some of the future cuts that we potentially have to make to TCSD as well. So, you know, thinking of the $1.8 million we've saved this year and next fiscal year, you know, that kind of puts it in a little bit into perspective. One thing that I saw in our Public Work Director's presentation was the moving of the Ronald Reagan Sports Park to 2627. I hope, hopefully, and maybe in the next portion of this, we can have a conversation of, you know, are we going to split that up? Do we want to split that up in the different phases? I appreciate the work on Loma Linda, like changing the fitness equipment at Loma Linda to, you know, reduce those costs, and then, you know, you get some, you know, economies of scale putting them together. So I think that'll fit into the next part of the conversation. And then one thing I wanted to talk about is I've been having conversations with some of the business owners in Old Town that are adjacent to the creek. And for years, we've talked about, and, you know, whether it's been VTV or sort of like this vision of the creek, of like having businesses orient to the creek. Humblesome and Quail have both expressed interest in orienting towards the creek, and we don't have a specific CIP sheet for anything like that, so there's not, like, I can't put it in like the bike lanes and trails, because it's not really trails, it's really more, how do you connect existing infrastructure to the creek and sort of orient and make that space safe to use. So I'd ask that at some point we have a CIP sheet that's specifically for creek improvement, access, ADA access, as well as like helping these businesses orient some of their space to the creek and help with that development. I thank you for the time, Madam Mayor. This is probably good for now, and I'll add some things later. Thank you.
Thank you. Kalfas, anything to add, sir?
A couple things here that I guess that won't fit into the last slide either. I know city manager and I and assistant city manager, as well as Chief Crater, over the last couple of years now. If we remember back last year, there was a directive by Riverside County Fire to take the paramedic off of the truck throughout Riverside County. And since that time, we've had a BLS truck. And now with the hiring of more paramedics and the lowering of the minimum qualifications through CAL FIRE, they've been hiring more paramedics. So I would just ask our city staff to work with Chief Crater and myself and work on drafting a letter to the new fire chief of Riverside County and letting them know that we are willing, able, and we want to get back to full staffing with ALS units in Temecula. And I know they're going to be working on a work plan to get the trucks in Riverside County back to paramedics. But I would just ask that we work together to see that if we can be the first contract city to get our paramedic staffing back up to full staff. And with that, talking about budget deficits and stuff, I would also ask if we can do some future research and report back to the council at a future meeting on how the contract with AMR, our transportation services here in Riverside County, how that contract happens with county. You know, it's called the 201 rights, how the 201 rights work, if the city of Temecula can ever look into breaking from that contract and creating our own public transportation to reimburse the city into our general fund with those transportation costs. So just future research on that. The other things I have here I think will fit into the last bucket. I guess we could do one more real quick. Just, I know that city staff has done some field visits and there's a vision for, an ultimate vision for the Jefferson Basin over there in the Uptown Sports Park, as well as the Diaz property right across the street there. So if staff could just, and I know we're going to talk about this next Tuesday at our general plan update at the council meeting, but maybe just a brief overview of what staff has completed, what they're looking at completing, and what's in the works for that Jefferson property with the Uptown Sports Park. Other than that, Mayor, that is all I have until the last thing.
All righty, thank you very much. And how about to my right, Stu, anything? Mayor Pro Tem? Okay, all right. I'm just going to throw in just a little bit of my words here, and then we'll move on to the city manager's next slide that we were just looking at. Just super simple. I just want to be able to reiterate, in a sense, everything that my council members have been saying about how good things are here in our city and how blessed we are, in the sense that when I'm talking to other city council members from other cities, they're like, kudos to you guys. They're seeing that we're doing it right. And the fact that they're looking at their budget right now on an annual basis, that they're looking into the future and seeing that there's a lot more red than black. It's alarming to them, but it's really good for us. And so I think that's a really, really good thing to sit there and say we need to continue to do what we're doing. And I don't know who it was. I think it was Assistant City Manager Luke Watson. I think you were talking about the QLMP, reflecting on the QLMP. And the one thing that really stood out to me was living within our means and how important that is within the city. And we can really, truly say that we have been doing that, and we can see that. And Stu, you had mentioned the fact that, we're continuously looking and being proactive in the future, and we can see that within a lot of our subcommittees. So I'm very appreciative of that. And to our staff, to our city manager, I thank you guys for that. And I think that's the biggest thing right now today, as we're going to be moving into this next slide. For me, I know that we are going to continue to look through the lens of fiscal responsibility and good stewardship. We want to keep this up, that every dollar means something, that I know we have a lot of money in our coffers, in a sense, a lot more than other cities may, but we have that because we've been really good stewards. So, I appreciate the fact, and I love the fact that, 50 to 51% of our funding goes to public safety. And I believe truly we need to keep that in mind. And I know that we as a city are very proactive in that. And I appreciate, Matt, Ron, you bringing up a lot of stuff with fire. And I think it's been very, very helpful and influential with how our city is moving forward. And so I just want to encourage us, as we're going to move into this next slide and this next portion of this meeting, that as city, not only as city council members, city staff, but as a city together, that we continue to roll up our sleeves and continue to stay out of the red, even if it's way down in the future. But this is where it starts, and it's a day-to-day proactiveness that we need to just keep in mind. So with that, I'm going to roll it over to our city manager. When you're going to go into the list, sir, if we can, I have an idea if we can just shift one or two things around, if it's okay. I know it just came to mind. Yeah. Can we see that list real quick first before?
Yeah, before I get to the list, could I? There was a couple things that I heard recently that I'd prefer to zero in on.
Yes, please. Thank you.
And get as much clarity and direction as I can that'll allow us to kind of repackage some stuff for June 9th. And the first thing that I heard that kind of requires a little more direction or clarity would be the Ronald Reagan Sports Park playground. So if we could kind of just park on that for a moment. And between Ron and Erica, we've had a lot of conversations. There's been a lot of subcommittee work done. We know both, let's call it a large playground and a small playground at Reagan Park. And priorities. And there's a couple of parks that you saw today that we put ahead of some of that. But we're here to kind of discuss, funding. We're here to discuss priorities. I also know there was a desire to maybe get an economy of scale if we could do the large and the small at the same time. But I'd like to just have a brief conversation. I don't know, Ron or Erica, which one of you want to kind of start, and then let the council sort of, give us ultimate direction, and we'll repackage if we need to.
Okay, great. So we had that Parks and Recreation Subcommittee meetings that would have been council members Schwank and Stewart maybe 3 weeks or so ago, and we were discussing overall plans for that particular CIP. And so Stacy Fox had identified there were 2 parks that needed pretty much immediate taken care of, and it was Paseo Gallante and Loma Linda Phase or Section B. Originally, those were budgeted at $350,000 each, and Loma Linda Phase B, it was suggested by the subcommittee that we look at, instead of doing a play structure, we put in some exercise equipment. And roughly, we're looking at that would be about $120,000, so conceivably that could generate $230,000 in savings overall for that CIP. Separately, the 2 Ronald Reagan playgrounds were looked at, and the smaller one needs updated and repairs sooner. The larger one can hold off for a couple of years. So originally, those 2 were budgeted in 2 separate fiscal years, and we had the smaller one scheduled for this fiscal year at another $350,000. The suggestion coming out of the Parks and Rec Subcommittee, as I understood it, was if we could achieve savings with the Loma Linda Phase B, so that like $230,000 in savings there, and then possibly economies of scale if we bring both Ronald Reagan phases together as a single project, because you're only mobilizing the construction one time, you're going through 1 design phase instead of 2 design phases, and then on the community impact side, you only have a single closure. Perhaps we could look at bringing those 2 Ronald Reagan phases together into a single project. My understanding is that would require about an extra $500,000 in allocations into the CIP to bring them both into a single phase, as opposed to leaving Ronald Reagan Phase 2 out to be allocated at a later fiscal year. I believe if we brought them both together, I think the Parks Recreation team is capable, yes, confirmed, that they could bring it into this fiscal year if desired. Right now, it's scheduled, I think on that slide, for next fiscal year with Paseo Gallante and Loma Linda Phase B in 26-27. Ronald Reagan Phases 1 and 2 for 27-28. But all could be achieved within a single fiscal year, but it would require an additional allocation of approximately $500,000. And then as we get into the planning stage of that, we can more closely dial in on what the savings could be from bringing the 2 phases together. But that would require getting some more information from the contractors, getting some estimates, and seeing what kind of economies of scale we could actually achieve. So that full $500,000 might not be necessary, but that would be a safe planning number. Okay. Ron, did you want to add anything to that, or is that good?
No, I think that summarizes it pretty well of what was discussed at the subcommittee level.
Okay. Would you like to add to that, or anybody from that subcommittee directly? Okay, go ahead.
So thank you, and then thank you, Erica, for that recap of the subcommittee. Yeah, so the thinking was, obviously, thinking of the site, and if you can think of Ronald Reagan, you've got the large playground with the shade structure and the swings for the older kids, right? And then you've got that space in between, and then you've got the older, much older, littler structure for the youngers, right? The conversation we had was thinking of that whole site as one project, right? So as a parent, you see people out there all the time, and my kids are much older now, but I remember going there, and you're kind of like watching the little one on the little one, and so you kind of see where parents are in the middle there. And we wanted to try to make that, it feels a little disconnected, to be honest, like the way it's now. And so we wanted to make it feel more of like one site. So as a parent, you could have some seating in the middle, and you're kind of paying attention to both your kids at the same time if you've got multiple children running around, and then connecting those structures in some sort of net, bridge, or something like that. So it was like kind of like a meaningful connection. So that was a conversation we had. With respect to Loma Linda, so Loma Linda is unique. It's like a linear park. There's like 3 parks, and the B is the one in the middle, right? So you've already got playgrounds in the other ones. This B one, we thought, hey, can we think of something different? And I had a conversation with one of the reps that sells this fitness equipment, and they're like, hey, we could do this fitness equipment at a pretty drastic savings over the structure. So that was a thinking. As a council, if that's the direction we'd like to go, I think the subcommittee would obviously support that. But if we need to split it up, or however we want to do it as a council, at the end of the day, I think we'll be supportive of that. The council comments on it, but just wanted everyone to know that was the conversation we had at subcommittee, was make it one, make it whole, try to get some economies of scale, save a little bit money on the fitness equipment install, and then you sort of a one project that's just construction one time and it's done and it's open, early next year, whatever it is. So.
Yeah, and to add to that, the Ronald Reagan Sports Park has been one big construction zone for the last 2 or 3 years. So it would be nice to knock this thing out, be done, and have that whole facility available to the public. So that was the other consideration too. It's a one and done. So I'm definitely in favor of moving forward with both these parks at the same time.
Absolutely. Okay, I'm just going to chime in here just as a mom kind of growing out of the park phase in a sense. I've got 1 or 2 left in there, and then I'd like to pass it over to the gentleman who has the most youngest kids here. But I would say the Ronald Reagan Sports Park, I like the idea of kind of consolidating everything. Same thing, I've always been that mom where I'm kind of in between, where I got kids at the swing, kids over the big park, who's going to fall off, and just being that mom to make sure that I have eyes on all my kids at one time. I would be very appreciative to have something more consolidated, but again, divided, where I still have some littles, so they're not fighting for the big kid space and vice versa and getting knocked down. So if this is something that monetarily, like, it would be a good move to maybe save some money or just get everything done, pull off the Band-Aid, I'm in agreement too. I'd like to be able to see that done. So anything from the guy with the youngest
if I could
kids?
add to that, during the subcommittee phase, Eric and I were talking with Councilman Swank and Stewart, and what we came up with as well is if they were to be combined, it could be reimagined, and it could be reimagined how the two connect, rather than just going in and just replacing what's there with something more up to date. It could be reimagined, and a new concept could be kind of proposed to the council.
I love that, yeah, because that is definitely, I think, one of the biggest parks. Obviously, that's a hub for a lot of families. I know a lot of families, it doesn't matter if you're coming from the south or the north end, everybody seems to kind of come right into that area, which is, it's a great park. So, Kalfas, do you have anything?
I would agree with the statements made. I think that we should combine them. I think that we should reimagine it. I think we should move it up to this fiscal year, if at all possible. As well as I would like to look into adding adult exercise equipment to Ronald Reagan Sports Park. That's one of the most utilized parks for kids and families of all ages, and a lot of parents are always there hanging around, like you said, in between. So I think adding some adult exercise equipment to Ronald Reagan Sports Park, if possible, to look into that. But I agree, combine them, reimagine, move it up, and look into adding some adult exercise equipment if possible.
If I can add something to that, just out of curiosity, again, just for conversation piece, because I do love that. And I think, like I was at the gym this morning and with my husband for the first time in forever. And it was really nice to see the fact that I saw, their parents and the kids 5:30 in the morning working out. Question is, like, can we kind of reimagine something where we have an adult and kid ability to work out, where it's not just for adults, but something that can be kind of utilized for families? So if you're running on a trail or doing something, it's not just the kids standing there. It's like, hey, take part of that. I don't know if it exists, but it's a possibility. What's your thought?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's definitely a great possibility, and to imagine, right? We're reimagining the park. Let's look into the equipment that's able to be utilized by both adults and kids. And
Yeah, a lot of the park exercise equipment as it's designed has, they have interpretive signage that explains how to use the equipment, and a lot of it is suitable for all ages. So I think there's a lot of potential there.
Love that. Let me come back right to you. Gentlemen, anything? Yeah, okay, back to you.
I'll just build off of what you all are saying. So I spoke with a rep from Compam, and she's a local resident, and this fitness equipment is like, it's almost like an indoor gym outside. So it's like services is included, like, so I think what you're talking about, like being able to work out with your kids and stuff is like, it would fit in perfectly.
Love that.
And then, good news, they said the first 2 that you buy would be at that lower price, so we might be able to save a ton of money.
Hey, I like savings. I think Aaron Adams does as
Yeah,
well.
no, I heard what I needed to hear. I think for clarity, though, Ron, when we come back to the council June 9th, we should look at either its own CIP sheet for Ronald Reagan Playgrounds property, incorporating this discussion to explore the use of combining the playgrounds together. We're going to look at Park and Rec diff. There's some fund balance there that we can sort of explore before we know what this is going to cost. And then also the adult fitness equipment that the council was desirous to see maybe incorporated into future design. Of course, anything will come before the full council, but I think for clarity, I don't want it like lumped into playgrounds citywide. I think it needs its own CIP sheet just for clarity going forward. So we heard that, and unless there's anything else to add, I'll move forward on that one.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Anything else?
The other thing I heard was, Council Member Kalfas, your 3 items were pretty much research, administrative research, and then coming back to the council and letters and things of that nature. So heard, message received, definitely can follow up on that. And then the final thing that I heard related to budget CIP was this creek adjacent kind of access, ADA, business friendly. Ron, kind of question to you, and I think we have existing resources to dedicate to some of this stuff, particularly Old Town Marietta Creek frontage, but it's kind of buried in the maybe the trail line item of the CIP or bike trail thing. You want to speak to that, and maybe what we do consider is we call the description out differently there, or we identify an annual amount within the existing budget that we could pledge, towards these access points, bollards, some of the public safety issues that we've dealt with down here. Do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, we've been able to utilize our maintenance funds and maintenance budgets with regards to the trails and with regards to everything else that we do along the entire city. Those connections that you speak of, can definitely be upgraded. And I think that there's resources and there's funds available that we already utilize for when we do the bollards, the mulch, whenever we have to do replacements in those areas. I think we can direct those funds and get something more sustainable and something that's going to be longer lasting and true connections into those areas. Because in reality, they aren't that large. They aren't that large at all. And so I think that we can definitely do that.
That's perfect, and you're right, they're not big projects or anything like that. These are small things, so, that works for me as long as it works for the council.
Can I just interject something real quick as we're talking about sort of fiscal stability and accountability and all that? For a lot of the projects we're talking about, whether it's parks and rec or trails or whatever, one of the things we aren't talking about is long-term operations and maintenance of them. And so it makes me uncomfortable saying, oh, let's build this, let's build that, let's do these things. And I know that on the back end, some of that's going on to figure out, long-term O&M. But from a transparency perspective and from, I think, an accountability perspective for the council, if we're going to make decisions like that, I don't necessarily want to do them on the fly anymore. And I'd like to see us maybe, craft a bit of more of a formal policy on understanding what the full operations and maintenance costs are. Because it's great when we get grant funding to build a bike trail, right? But then if we're also assuming a future debt starting in year 5 as things wear down, or graffiti removal, or trespass, or vandalism, or fence repairs, or whatever, and we're assuming a financial liability of tens of thousands of dollars a year, I think we need to know that up front. So, so I'm just saying if I'd like to kind of formalize that a little bit today, or maybe bring it back by June 9th and see if we can't,
Is it a maybe a small budget policy that you're seeking, that you would like to see that with new capital improvement programs, as they're introduced, there's also we analyze the fact of ongoing O&M, regardless of funding strategies and things of that nature. 'Cause
well, that and
I think some of that's happening, but maybe we don't tell that story formally.
I think some of it is, but I also think that, you know, a lot of our infrastructure is still fairly new. And so we're not seeing the costs yet, and we may not see them for another 10 years or so. But I'd hate to, you know, walk over that fiscal cliff in the future and say, oh, whoops, you know, all of those bike trails are deteriorating, or the asphalt needs replacing, or whatever, and the X $1 million we got for these trails are now going to cost us, you know, $1.5 million in repairs, right? So I think it's a combined thing of not just, you know, authorizing new projects, but kind of looking at our current inventory and kind of projecting that out a little bit as well.
Okay, great perspective and bringing all that in as a whole, so thank you for that. Anything else, City Manager, that you have on before we move in?
No, on that, we'll work on that. Understood.
Okay. No, very, very good. Thank you very much, guys, for bringing everything forward. And
Maybe we can go to that slide, kind of a list of some outstanding items. I think it's slide 54. Are we up there? Let me take, I can see it. All right.
City Manager.
There it is, slide 54.
City Manager, if I can bring up one question, is there a possibility, if it doesn't screw up your notes, if we can somehow at least put the Community Services Grant Program and maybe directly under it, we talk about the council discretionary funds, since they're not the same, but they're similar?
Sure.
Okay.
We can take these in any order. Maybe easiest to hardest, I don't know. Maybe we'll just take the library feasibility study off the list for now, or we'll take that first.
Okay.
That is included in the budget. I referenced it in my opening remarks. I think this is a good business decision. I think it's a good investment. While we were in here, Erica got confirmation from Riverside County that they will agree to existing terms for a 2-year extension of our library contract services at Roberts. So that will likely come to the City Council in the near term. That will buy us some time. We budget for this feasibility study, and then we dig deep into the financials of the O&M and determine if our current model is superior or if we need to go in a different direction. So I'm seeing general support for that, and unless anyone has any concerns or questions. Okay.
Anybody from the council in disagreement with that?
All right, very
none?
good.
Good.
Let's go to budget policies.
I'll take that for 300.
500, yeah. Budget policies, we discussed it. We tried to, high level. We've done briefings with all of you privately. There's a lot there in front of you. You have hard copies. A lot of this stuff exists in some form, and some of this stuff has been practices the City Council is very accustomed to, but we didn't codify it necessarily in a budget policy. Now, just a reminder, budget policies, whatever they are, whatever they become, they come before this body once a year. So every year, whoever's sitting here has an opportunity to review them, change them, support them, but they do drive what we're doing here. So Jen, do you want to kind of take those piece by piece, and maybe we start with the elimination of a budget or a budget policy, because that's probably the easiest, and we'll kind of go from there.
Sure. Yeah, so we drafted the proposed budget to exclude the debt paydown strategy policy that was put into place 5 years ago. Again, not to beat a dead horse, but we met all the objectives, so no need for that policy anymore. So we proposed to remove that one. And in its place, sort of phase 2 of that program is to introduce a pension funding policy. So this is a policy where we would utilize our existing irrevocable trust for the pension. We would deposit funds into that trust throughout the fiscal year to reach a target amount of $10 million. And that $10 million would be used to pay down any future liabilities that might arise, depending on how CalPERS recalculates our pension each year. We could also use that funding if we stayed at 100% funded. We could utilize those funds to reimburse ourselves for prior PERS payments. It is restricted to just being able to use for CalPERS purposes. But the good thing is we will always have CalPERS payments to make, so we can always utilize those funds. But the policy itself outlines the different funding mechanisms, one of which would be to do some seed funding of $7.5 million. That would bring us up to a total balance of $9 million in that trust. If that were to be approved, we have 1.5 in there now. And then the beauty of the trust is it's allowed to be invested in other instruments than what we as a city can invest in. So the potential for increased interest earnings is available to us by utilizing that trust. And then another mechanism for funding the trust would be to set aside 30% of our year-end surplus, if any. And that we have done that every year since the trust has been around, except for I think one. So that's another mechanism. And then we also wanted to incorporate budgeted deposits into the trust to get us up to that 10 million so that we can invest throughout the year into that trust and use the dollar cost averaging method of investing to take advantage of the ups and downs in the markets. So that's pretty much that pension trust policy. And then we have another new policy similar to that is our retiree health benefit. Similar, we have a separate irrevocable trust for those benefits. Our program right now is 120% funded. So we have parameters written into the policy that would tell us how we can utilize the funds in that trust to reimburse ourselves for those retiree health benefit payments. The policy always also talks about how we would replenish that trust if we fall below the 100%. So follows a similar philosophy. The cost allocation plan and user fee study policy, that's very straightforward. That just simply codifies the desired timeline of when to update those policies or those plans. So every 3 to 5 years was the direction we received from council last time we brought forward the user fee study. So we just wrapped a policy around that. And then the biggest one and the biggest change really is the first one, the capital financing and debt management. So this is it was an existing policy, but we expanded it to incorporate new policy goals as suggested by Mayor Pro Tem when we presented this to you earlier in the year. And then the new addition is we have certain criteria to analyze and confirm that we have done our due diligence to look at all other financing options before obligating the general fund. And then we want to make sure that we're in a good, solid fiscal position before obligating the general fund. So the policy also comes with a checklist. And on that checklist, we have things such as, is the general fund structurally balanced over the 5 years? Yes or no? Is the reserve for economic uncertainty fully funded? Yes or no? Is the PERS pension 100% funded? Yes and no. And since that could be a moving target in the future, we want to ensure that if it is no, that we are on track to have it fully funded per our pension policy. And then have we looked at all other alternative financing options? Yes or no? And then is the debt used to raise capital for a one-time capital improvement or ongoing operations? We do want to restrict it to only one-time capital improvements. We wouldn't want to issue debt to support ongoing operations. And then, so this will be a discussion point. The way that the policy is currently written is that does the proposed annual debt service exceed 10% of the general fund operating revenues? And we did some analysis with our financial advising team to calculate how much capital could we raise at that 10% of operating level. And it was a very high number. So we had them run a few different scenarios. And the scenario that seemed to be the most feasible would be to limit that to a 5% of general fund revenue metric. And that would yield about $75 million in capital. If we were to issue a bond with debt service limited at 5% of our revenue, we could yield around 75 million. A 10% would be, almost double that, obviously. So our financial advisor's recommendation is to keep it around 5%. But that is up for discussion, It could be 2%, it could be 3%. It's a council direction, since it is a policy. So that's one discussion point. And then the other two metrics we want to just check the box and make sure that we're good is that the proposed financing would not adversely affect the city's credit rating, and that the useful life of the asset being financed is not shorter than the debt to repay that asset. So that is essentially the checklist, and we're open to discussion.
Yeah, just real quick, and then I want to hand it off to Mayor Pro Tem, because you were driving this at your request from the council. This is a policy drafted that's not designed, I think, to tie the hands of the council, but rather put just some guardrails, some best practices around any temptation or desire down the road to entertain going into debt and what that looks like. And we like the checklist. It's the back page of the draft policy. We just think it's it's just good business to go through. So Mayor Pro Tem, do you want to add anything? Because this is kind of your item.
Yeah, so I think so I had at our last meeting talking about budgets like 9 items that we had added. I think this one's probably one of the more consequential ones. And the idea here isn't that the city can never encumber debt, right? And this isn't intended as a blockade to that. It's just, from my perspective, it's intended as a very full disclosure and sort of open-throated way for the council to say, hey, we're going to assume some liability or some risk here, but here's why. And I think these basic check boxes say, we have these obligations and responsibilities first and foremost, or at least that's sort of the tenor of the council today, right? I'd like you had both mentioned future councils, right? And we know we can't bind a future council to this policy. They can change it if they want to, but they're going to have to also publicly describe why they're changing it, because these are just good fiscal, conservative, measures that from a contemporary management of a city should always be in place. And so that's really what I was trying to accomplish here. And I think you guys, knocked it out of the park on really putting together that checklist and disclosure document, really is what it is. So, I'd appreciate everybody, supporting that, because I think it's an important piece to maintaining the stability we have.
All right, thank you very much, Mayor Pro Tem. I'm going to send it over to Stu.
Yes, and I totally am in favor of it. However, I do want to keep it at 5%, only because if we ever do decide to build a sheriff's station, I know we're going to be looking at a nut probably close to that size. So I would rather have that in the back pocket. So 5% would be my goal for that policy, yeah.
Anything else, sir?
No.
Okay. All right. Send it over to Brendan, please.
No, I agree. I think 5% is a good target. Just thank you to city staff and Mayor Pro Tem for adding these in there. I think these are all, these are great for future councils to look at, and no, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. So when we went through this process of thinking this is really good, the checklist is about as intuitive as it gets. Anybody can go through this checklist. In fact, I was able to go through this checklist, and we wouldn't be able to get debt right now. So I love it. I love the simplicity of it, and I think for the public, it creates a very simple way for people to say, oh, this is what's happening. I'm going to talk about the 5%. So the 10%, that's just, that number gets thrown out, and we start looking at, what is that, $150 million, that's just absolutely insane, right? After all the work we've done, after all the work past councils have done, we just are paying millions and millions and millions of dollars to get caught up. I don't really want to go out and buy a new car. I want us to live within our means. So I'm going to actually push lower than the 5%. You know, if you did 1%, it'd be $15 million, 2% would be 30 of these, you know, increments of 15, right? And so I think, you know, we got to be in the 2 to 2.5% range for this is where I'm at. I think it's really important, not that we should never, a future council should never incur debt. Something may come up, but I want that hurdle to be a little tough to get over. They're going to have to work out a little bit. They're going to have to practice. They're going to sharpen their pencils, figure it out to kind of get over that hurdle to incur $75 million in debt. Which is, you know, if a future council or this council were to do that, that's, you know, $5 million a year payment, right? That we have to think about. And where is that going to, where is that going to come from? One other thing that I think is important to add to this is if we're going to, if a future council is going to try to incur debt like this through a bond, that I'd like a standalone meeting. I wouldn't want to see this buried on a business item on just a normal council meeting at 3 o'clock. I think a standalone meeting at 6 o'clock. I mean, I wouldn't want to see it at 9 o'clock either. I think if you do something like this, to have it in the evening so everyone can come out. These are big decisions that I think should be discussed in full view of the public. So I would ask for 2.5%, and then have an official standalone meeting written into this policy. If the council's going to take on debt, they're going to have to do a standalone meeting
Okay.
at 6 p.m.
At 6 p.m. Okay, sounds good.
Very specific.
Very, not 6:01. Okay, so what I'm hearing so far right now is a little bit of change. Obviously, everybody's wanting to move that percentage down from 10%. I've got Brendan and Stu at 5%. Zach, you're sitting at about 2.5. And then you also brought up the fact of a standalone meeting. Mayor Pro Tem, where would you like to kind of land with the percentage?
Well, I'm good with 5%. Standing meeting I think is great. I don't want to reopen the conversation on when council meetings should occur, so I'd leave that silent. But otherwise, yeah, I'm okay with that.
Okay, so I've got a 3-1. I'm going to ping pong over down to the city manager for a second. If you can just let me know, I kind of see your head nodding a little bit and what you're hearing and seeing before I chime in. What does that look like as far as being in between that 2 to 5% for your staff and for the city, of running the city for these bonds?
Well, this is truly a policy decision.
Absolutely.
You know, as you and I talked about, this is like how big a house do you want to go to the bank to buy and borrow, and you're going to live with that mortgage for 30 years. It's a similar analogy to what we're discussing here on paper, and what can we realistically bite off and chew and swallow, and so I think what I'm hearing three of you kind of say, like, hey, you know, draft it at 5%. This has to come back to the council June 9. And if there's something different that wants to be discussed then, we can discuss it then. But we could, for the purpose of trying to move this forward, we could do that and at least get something down on paper policy-wise. I know Stu wanted to add something.
Stu, you had something?
Well, with the escalation of cost to build anything today, you can't build nothing for $30 million. You know, literally it has to be that higher percentage as far as if we're building a city asset. So that's where I see 5% is kind of like a good target, because it's more realistic. We would have never built this city hall. I mean, we're sitting in the city hall because that city council took a leap of faith that we would grow into it. And now bringing our sheriff's department into city hall, we have utilized a lot of that space that was kind of underutilized, and brought value to our town, having our officers here locally. So I probably wasn't a big fan when they built this place because of the cost. I mean, I don't know what it was, 65 million or something like that. 75? Yeah, so it's like, you know, sometimes city councils have to make bold moves, and they seem a little maybe crazy at the time, but in retrospect, if we had to build this thing today, we'd be looking at $120 or $150 million. So, you know, it's something we have to think long-term. And like I said, the costs have escalated so substantially in the last 10 years that, you know, 5% to me is a very safe, good number that, you know, our city, I think, could handle. So.
Okay, thank you. Anybody to my left? Yes, sir.
I just want to read off a couple of the policy goals that Mayor Pro Tem put in regards to debt management, just so everyone watching and here can see what a future council would have to look at prior to even taking on this amount of debt. And I'll just start off at number 2 through 5. It says support long-term infrastructure and economic growth and not use long-term debt to support routine operating expenditures or structural budget deficits. Number 3, ensure intergenerational fairness by using long-term debt only for assets that provide benefits over multiple decades. Number 4, use debt strategically to leverage grants, partnerships, and catalytic development opportunities when they provide clear long-term public benefit, and most possibly even the biggest one, number 5, protect the city's long-term fiscal resilience by ensuring that current decisions to not limit future council's ability to respond to economic uncertainty. And I think those are 5 crucial things that Mayor Pro Tem asked to be codified in this, and those are big prior to taking on any sort of debt. So I think, you know, to me, again, 5% is a good number. They're guardrails. Future city council could say, hey, with cost escalation, we actually need it to be 10%, or maybe one day a future council lowers it to 2.5%. But I think 5% is a good guardrail to put on this council and future councils. I'm not opposed to having a standalone meeting, but I also think that our public business meetings are the most transparent form that we can offer the residents. And so whatever the council decides, but I'm totally okay with having debt obligation placed on a future city council business item. But if we want to have a standalone meeting, I totally agree with that too. At the current time council meetings are at. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? Anybody, Stu, where are you standing on the standalone meeting? Is that something we want to bring forward and have? We can always have more discussion later on another time, but.
Yeah, I mean, I'm okay with a standalone meeting. I do think our city council meeting is our business meeting, so I don't know if it necessarily has to be a completely, you know, in the evening. I don't know. We've kind of proven people are willing to come out at any time we have our meetings. So yeah, so I'm still in favor of just keeping it at our city council, but definitely not in some sort of a consent calendar measure. It has to be a standalone, specific public hearing meeting, yes.
Okay. Matt, anything from you? No. Okay, so city manager, what I'm hearing is, and I'll go along with that at the 5%. Let's have more further discussion. We can bring it back at the next council meeting, and then also have further discussion with the standalone meeting. We don't have to do that today. So if we can bring those two things.
Okay.
Anything on that item?
No, I think, and everyone else is comfortable with the draft, all the other policies. I didn't hear anything from anyone else. So we'll repackage this and we'll bring forward to not the next council meeting, but it'll be the one behind that, June 9.
Okay.
So.
And again, I would just want to thank all my colleagues. Great job on that. I know, again, we're just trying to do our best, all of us, to try to be conservative on this budget thing. So great job. All right, next one, sir.
Very, very helpful. All right, let's go to, let's talk Station 84. Councilmember Kalfas, maybe you're the best to sort of kick this conversation off, and I can jump in wherever you need me to.
You got it. Thank you, Mr. City Manager. Yeah, this one for me, like you said, Mayor, earlier, I spend a lot of time at Ronald Reagan just between Little League and soccer. I also spent some time at the fire station with the firefighters and battalion chiefs over there. And how this originally got brought up, I think last year, talking about putting a flagpole at every city-owned baseball field and softball field, just because there's a couple fields out there that, you know, we go to Pledge of Allegiance before every game. There's no flag to pledge allegiance to, so we're kind of just doing it to, you know, the air. So that's how this whole thing started. And then with the Station 84 flagpole, that started because there are certain fields at Ronald Reagan that you can't see the small flag by the snack bar. So I was thinking, you know, where could we place a bigger flagpole? And then it became the Garrison flag, and had a couple meetings with city staff and the community, and behind Station 84 is publicly accessible. We're doing the Ronald Reagan trails back there, and a trail goes right by there. And I think that would just be a monumental kind of thing for Temecula. I know it's a big flag. It's the Garrison flag is what we were thinking. The cost estimate up there is around $100,000. But going along lines of that, so when the wheels started turning, we talked about how we just put in that Sheriff Memorial over here on City Hall. And along with this, and I don't know if this is included in this budget or it's going to be a separate item, Mr. City Manager, but doing a firefighter memorial around the flagpole over at Station 84 behind there. And something that is publicly accessible. You have the trail, you have the fire station back there, but also not in, like, a lot of times these memorials can be inside a fire station or in the backyard of the fire station. This would be on the backside, so you wouldn't have to ring the fire station doorbell to go walk by it. It would literally be publicly accessible. And that's really where all this came from. And I know there's been some discussion on the size of the flagpole and the cost and all of that, and staff has done their research and due diligence on the cost and maintenance and all of that. And we can talk about flag code and all that if we wanted to. But that's really, the vision was a big Garrison flag at Station 84 surrounding a firefighter memorial, which can maybe come later down the line. I don't know if you want to talk about the memorial, is this more just the flag?
Yeah,
and
maybe
pole
I
right
should
now?
clarify the memorial. There's nothing budgeted for a firefighter memorial. We did have some conversations early. That would be something that would come later, but the concept was discussed, I think at a subcommittee level early in the year. But nothing, that does not include that per se.
Yeah, so just specifically for the flagpole, large Garrison flag behind Fire Station 84. They're already going through their whole remodel right now, so it wouldn't fit into that bucket. So this would be another budget item. But I think it's really just a creating community type of thing. 4th of July, that's where the fireworks are. You'll see the big Garrison flag blowing there. Just kind of the identity of Temecula at that Ronald Reagan Sports Park flagpole.
All right, thank you very much, Calvis. And just so people know, I mean, some people don't understand the size of a Garrison flag. The 15, when you guys are exiting right there or going onto the 15, that massive flag, that is actually the biggest flags that we have. Those are the Garrison flags. So just for the public to realize that. Yes, I'll pass it down to the right.
So is there any flag that's smaller than the Garrison that we could, because I would like to see it be able to be flown 24/7 and lit up 24/7. And from what I understand about the protocol of the Garrison flag, it's only supposed to be for special events, taken down, put back up. So there's a maintenance involved with flying a Garrison flag. And the guy at the gas station can do it because he's not government. But we as government, I think we have to abide by the traditional rules of the American flag. So if there was a way we could do a slightly smaller flag that isn't officially a Garrison flag, that could be seen from any field because I think it would look cool at night, lit up. I think that could be a very impactful sight for anybody traveling through Temecula to see that big flag. Maybe not this massive Garrison flag, but one slightly smaller that we can just keep up. That way we can just replace it, 2 or 3 times a year, when it needs to be replaced. I don't know. I have no idea what size flags come in, but.
So Public Works has done a little bit of research on the flags and not knowing everything about flags, but starting to know a little bit more. The Garrison flag is large. It's 20 by 38, so it's a huge flag like the mayor was mentioning. That size flag requires a much larger flagpole to be able to withstand wind forces, everything else. So we were estimating the flagpole would have to be between 80 to 100 feet. So it's going to be quite large. The next size flag would be a 10 by 20. Those are everyday flags that we see out there. So the flagpole wouldn't need to be nearly as high. And then there's even smaller flags, 5 by 9s that are used for bad weather, to be able to fly them. The Garrison flag, the initial protocol we've heard is that it's flown on Sundays as well as national holidays and special events. And then there would be a maintenance factor in our city crews having to put it up and take it back down. Not to mention, once in a while, we'll have a situation where the flag will get off its track up at the top, and then we have to use a rig to get up and put it back on its track so that it can be lowered and raised safely. So those are the different options that are available. We've looked at Station 84. The $100,000 estimate is just the flagpole, so it wouldn't be running electricity or the other things that we would need to do. That would be a different cost there. And we've looked at either replacement of the existing flag at Station 84. It's at the front of the station. But if we replace that one, obviously an 80 or 100-foot flag at the front of the station would be able to be seen from anywhere. But we've also looked at the back of Station 84, I think where Councilman Kalfas is talking about, where there's the trail. There's like a little seat wall in the back there, and that would be the secondary location, and then a third location would be on the property line where a rig can get into the back parking lot and place it at the back. And so there's options, but that's kind of what we've researched at this point. So to your point, it's a 20 by 38, or it's a 9 by 10 that's flown every day. 9 by 10, that's what we have. Yeah, that's what we have.
And Mayor,
If I could just throw one thing real quick in there, and then I think that's one of the things before we even move forward for me is even being able to look at what that cost of just running the electricity. I mean, that has to be lit up. If it's up, it has to be lit up 24/7. So at all points in time. So I think, looking at Mayor Pro Tem's approach at things, it's like, okay, what is going to be the cost of that? What is going to be maintenance of that? How much is it going to be to put that in there? Plus the flags rotating in and out too. And so I think for me right now, and I'm just going to put this out there, I think I'd rather have more information on the front end before we go down this route to see if this is a good fit for me as things are just for starting with 100,000. So love the concept. I love the heart behind it, the patriotism. I feel like for me, I just right now need more information on a bigger picture. So somebody had something. You did, sir.
yes, no, I agree. I'm not sure if this was going to be put on the budget tonight. I think definitely more research needs to be done. In regards to the U.S. flag code, I did do some research, and we can do some further with staff doing the research. But the etiquette guideline for U.S. flag in regards to garrison flag, when it talks about the special events and on Sundays, that's the military standard in practice. And military standard in practice, you would know better than any of us up here. They have very specific times when they fly the all-weather flag, when they fly the normal flag, when they fly the garrison flag, how they put up a flag, how they take down a flag, how they fold the flag. And to my knowledge, currently in Temecula, we don't have a military flag policy. Like, we don't do everything according to the military protocol and plans and etiquette. And specifically in the U.S. flag code, it allows for continuous display of the flag when a patriotic effect is desired and the flag is illuminated in darkness. So in theory, the garrison flag could be flown 24/7 as long as it is illuminated, essentially. And that wouldn't be going against our U.S. flag code policy. But I definitely agree that more research has to be done, and I definitely agree on the maintenance cost of this. Just so we are very clear, I am totally fine not allocating the $100,000 for this specific item in the next fiscal year budget, but doing more research and due diligence at the staff level to understand what the initial cost is, what the ongoing maintenance cost would be, as well as to make sure that we are fitting within the U.S. flag code policy. Thank you very much, Mayor.
Alrighty, I'm going to pass it to Mayor Pro Tem, and then you have something?
Yeah, nothing much else to add. I appreciate the intent, but definitely need some more research on this. And I'm not sure that, especially given its location and the maintenance, we have a lot of windy days, and so you'll be taking that thing up and down quite a bit, especially in the fall. And so, just a little bit concerned on that. I don't know if there's some sort of hybrid approach to this that we can contemplate. And I know that for major events, we've, been able to fly the garrison flag off the ladder truck and other things, and that's worked out fairly successfully. I'm not sure we need to necessarily do the same thing right at the station. I love the idea of a firefighter memorial. We've talked about that 10 years ago, and at the time the council was not interested. So, maybe we can kind of have that conversation again today to see, where that goes. But yeah, definitely needs a little bit more study.
Outstanding. Zach?
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm really glad that Mayor Pro Tem brought that up, and Councilmember Kalfas, you piqued my interest with the firefighter memorial. And you had mentioned that you talked about it in subcommittee. Could you sort of elaborate on that? Because I think like maybe longer term, this is like a bigger project than just this, and I'd like to hear about it.
Yes, absolutely. I think it was a subcommittee. It was with Councilmember Stewart. Was that who was it? Or Stewart? So we have a similar policy in place for the sheriff deputies and the memorial that we have here placed at City Hall, and it would almost mirror our sheriff deputy policy. And I don't have that specific policy in front of us, but essentially anyone who passed away in the line of duty that either worked or lived in the city of Temecula would be placed on that wall, or the future firefighter memorial. So it would really mirror the sheriff one we have currently, and just a way to honor the first responders that have given their lives in the line of duty to the city of Temecula and the residents and the surrounding agencies. And really that memorial, there's one in Sacramento. I know every time we go up to Sacramento, we've all been there, and there's a firefighter memorial up there. So this would be a smaller scale version of that. But essentially, a way for the same way the deputies' families here can walk by and see their fallen family member and kind of just memorialize them up there. I think on the hill behind Station 84 would be a great way to do that.
No, thank you for that. And I think that location's like actually quite impressive when you're sitting up there, and there is a little seat wall that's totally underutilized. So I could see, a few years down the road, like actually going through some conceptual designs and come up with something that like really represented, the heart behind what you're trying to do, and incorporate something like that. So, I think there's consensus to get more information, but if we could drive that memorial sort of conversation as well, and especially like you mentioned, it ties into the trails back there, and it's right behind Station 84. I think it's a great idea.
Okay. Anybody else want to tag in on this at all, or you have everything you're needing?
Yeah, no, this is helpful. More research, heated, and we will do that. And then somewhat related to this, I think it's the Public Recognition City Council ad hoc. And remember, this is a once a year per policy kind of thing. So we will be back in front of the full council with the firefighter memorial concept and for further direction, and maybe some locations and design and concepts. So between now and the fall, I think we'll be in front of the council on that full item. So, okay.
All right. Love that idea.
Very good. Okay. Maybe we should go to possible one-time contribution to MSJC Endowment Fund. And this is a conversation the Mayor Pro Tem and I have had in front of you. I did print out sort of the priorities of where funding goes on that first page. It's kind of at the bottom there. 25% will support students' success initiatives, scholarships, things of that nature. And then 75% will be endowed to support the MSJC University Center, which I'll remind everyone is here in Temecula, is part of the towers. So Mayor Pro Tem, would you like to kind of speak greater detail to this and desire you wanted your colleagues to consider?
Yeah, so, obviously MSJC has been a great partner. I see this as both a way of recognizing that collaboration, and especially the work that President Schultz has done with the city over the last, 10 years or so, in creating this remarkable resource for our community. As he's retiring, typically they'll put together something along these lines. I liked the intent of this compared to some of the others I've seen come out of universities and colleges over the years, because, and if you go to the second bullet point on top of page 2, it's 75% to support MSJC University Center expanding affordable local pathways to bachelor's degrees, strengthening regional workforce. I'd like to request that the council consider a $25,000 contribution to this endowment for two reasons. One is to sort of respect the relationship and hard work that has been done. But second, I think it reinforces our seat at the table, because one of the things that I've worked on both with President Schultz and I'm looking forward to with the new president is reinforcing the idea that we don't want just any degree pathway. And I've joked about this before, that universities and colleges are really good at creating programs that nobody needs. But in this case, I think MSJC has done a real admirable job of having degree pathways that are relevant to our community, But this specific fund and this specific opportunity helps, I think, memorialize in a lot of respects that commitment to the community to develop things that are in line with what our workforce needs and what our city kind of demands as far as training and education and support. So that's kind of all I have on that, is just a small contribution to help continue that relationship and hopefully grow it.
All right, thank you very much, Mayor Pro Tem. Let me see. Do we want to start off from our left? Anybody? I keep going to my left.
I can start us off. Just looking at it here, I think it's a great foundation to contribute to. Just a couple questions, maybe for Mr. City Manager. A couple of years ago, I believe we, earmarked around $1 million to MSJC. Just where have we spent that yet? What did that go to? And then lastly, has any other cities surrounding us donated to this fund? And if so, how much?
Yeah, so you're correct. It was a few years ago when the city council was issuing community reinvestment grants, and it was $1 million that was earmarked for higher education. At that time, my recollection was it was really proposed to go towards Cal State University San Marcos, as we were attempting to entice them to move from their Sparkman location into the MSJC towers that were newly occupied. And that was the sponsorship, that was the contractual that went to the city council. So it earmarked $1 million for higher education, but to Cal State San Marcos. Since then, a lot has happened in this space. The check has not been cut, okay? And I asked the other day sort of like where we're at, and there's a new president coming on board, as the Mayor Pro Tem mentioned, MSJC. They are focused on the shell and the build out of their current property there. And my office intends to sit down probably in July when the new president gets settled and really hammer out the details between Cal State San Marcos and MSJC. And we believe that $1 million earmark that the council pledged should and probably will go ultimately to MSJC. But we still need some more time to sort of work with both higher education institutions, clean that up, make sure there's understanding, and then probably come back to the council to refine the sponsorship agreement. But the $1 million, we're still holding it, but I believe it's ultimately going to end up with MSJC as the property owner and their campus. And so hopefully, later this summer, we'll get some of this ironed out. But yes, that will be a $1 million donation.
Thank you very much. And just that second question, has any other local jurisdiction donated to this fund yet? Or if not, or if they have, how much, and if not?
Yeah, I had originally thought that our neighbor to the north had pledged some dollars. I haven't done a lot of research on this, but the mayor advised me this morning that I was wrong. In assuming
that's what I was told by their council, by two members. So that's what I was told yesterday, that there was nothing pledged. That I think 5,000 was going to go, but to my understanding, that's
maybe the Mayor Pro Tem has more information on that.
Yeah, at the foundation board meeting for MSJC, they had talked. I mean, Marietta had been mentioned as one of those that had pledged, so I don't know what's happened with that.
They had a meeting around the agenda that they said.
All right. But also, I'm understanding that San Jacinto has also pledged $10,000, and there was one other city, and I can't remember which one that was mentioned, also pledging $10,000.
Maybe Menifee.
Yeah, maybe Menifee. Yeah,
possibly Menifee.
If the council likes, I mean, I can definitely do more research on our neighboring partners. I could come back to the full council outside of budget with sort of maybe a better staff report and presentation on who's doing what's going where, and then and ultimately get direction, unless you want to handle it differently.
Well, I mean, candidly, I don't care what the other cities are doing, to be honest, because this is a resource in our backyard that I think we need to support. The fact that they're coming on board to support something that's in our backyard is phenomenal, right? But I don't think that, my decision doesn't weigh on what they do.
Agreed. All right, yes, Zach.
I'm so glad you said that, because that was the first thing I was going to say. I don't really care what anyone else is doing. I think what we're doing matters. You bring up great points there. A higher education institution in our community is really important for long-term growth, long-term sustainability. As a proud community college graduate myself from MSJC and then transferred to Cal State San Marcos, community colleges provide so much. More than just a space and classes. It's a place for the community to come together. You're seeing what's happening at that campus, and it's important. But the endowment serves the students, and that's the most important thing. So I would fully support a $25,000 contribution to this endowment. I think like you said, it reinforces our seat at the table. We are players. We are partners. We want to be involved in what happens going forward. But we also want to see this institution, and Mount San Jacinto is one of a few accredited Hispanic-serving institutions in the community college district. And I'm a part-time professor at Moreno Valley College, which is also an underserving institution, and I see daily what the impact of these community colleges and endowments do for students to get their education, to move on, to grow, and to prosper. So happily support this for you.
Okay. Stu?
Yeah, I'm totally supportive of it too. They have ventured off into the trades also, so that's been a really impactful thing for a lot of kids in our valley who aren't necessarily going the college route, but have opportunities to get certificates that are necessary to get certain jobs. So, very, very supportive. And it is in our backyard, so I think we have to.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, and then Brendan, I know I can go right now, or I know you didn't give an answer as far as where you stood. Do you want me to go and then?
No, I can go. I just have one more. I don't know why. I just have a hard time. We're approving the next topic up here is going to be looking at the community service grant program. We're looking at increasing that from 5,000 to 10,000. That means we are maximum giving these community services $10,000 for their grant program. But we're saying, hey, we see you here, we hear you, but we're going to give $25,000 just like that to another program. So I just have a hard time with that. I don't know why. It could just be something that I have. I would like to see a lesser amount than $25,000, but totally understand that you guys want to do $25,000. Totally see the benefits of the endowment. Totally see all of that. I just would like to see a lesser amount, but I totally get all your perspectives. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to jump in and then pass it over to Mayor Pro Tem. So as for myself, having kids going into community college, I was in community college myself for the first year or so of my college career. Yes, there is a great success with being able to meet kids where they're at and being able to grow. As far as for myself, I'm looking at the fact, I believe that Kalfas brought it up as well. We already brought $1 million to the table. It was a blessing to be able to have that money, to be able to bring that over to them. And as I'm looking at this thing right here, it says 25% will support student success with scholarships, emergency assistance, basic needs. I think some of those I would like to know more about, like what does the emergency assistance look like? What does basic needs look like? Is that something that we need to be diving into? And then also, I would also honestly like to kind of see where we're coming out in the future, city manager, as far as the conversation piece with $1 million. I mean, I think we would definitely be above and beyond being able to help them in this realm if we could help them with expanding, the towers or whatnot. It seems like that's what they're kind of moving towards anyway. So my position right now would be to hold off on this as we have other things coming down the pipeline too, and just being able to see what they're really needing with the emergency assistance and basic needs, and is there another area that we can support them in without financially doing so, maybe something else throughout the city with other resources. So that's where I stand. And Mayor Pro Tem?
So two things. One, let's not conflate the $1 million with the $25,000 because those are two very different investments. One was through the federal funding from, COVID relief funds and all of that, and it was intended to help grow relevant programs, not this. This is a very different funding source. The other thing I'd say is, it's a $25,000 one-time investment in, arguably one of the larger employers in our city as well. Not just from a, nonprofit sort of status because they have their own foundation and all that, but from a employment status, they're a big contributor to our local economy. I understand where you're coming from on the nonprofit side, but this is a one-time thing. The nonprofits receive up to $10,000 a year, continually. This is just a one-time investment. So I would, I'm happy to let this come back, but also recognize that it would be nice to have this sealed up before the end of the campaign and Mr. Schultz's departure from the university in June. So there's a bit of a timeliness to this, and I don't know how that aligns with, the contributions and commitments and so forth.
City Manager, if you can help out in that area, please.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, I was unofficially keeping score here, and I think what I might suggest is that this warrants draft funding in the draft budget, but it probably should be a standalone item that we bring on June 9 with the budget. But the majority of the council I'm hearing is generally supportive today, so I think I have an obligation to draft it and bring it forward on June 9. And I think if it goes and moves, that should hopefully meet the deadline. And then these dollars would be obviously available July 1 too. So, but the notification would be made, or decision would be made June 9.
Okay.
If everyone's comfortable with that approach.
Okay. Yeah. So what I'm hearing is we're going to bring it forward on June 9th. Is everybody good with that?
We're gonna put it into the budget.
Yep.
And then we'll bring forward, we'll carve out this conversation on June 9.
Okay. Is everybody good with that? To my left? Okay. All right. Sounds good. Next one, sir.
Very good. Thank you. Okay. And Mayor, I heard we're down to the last two, and you wanted to sort of combine these two. But I'll start with Community Service Funding Grant Program. I know we had members in the public, I don't know if they're still here, speak to that. This has been a topic that's been in front of the City Council last couple of meetings. In front of you, we did take some liberties to print out a red line version of the guidelines, and as well as some slides. And I'm just gonna briefly run through these things, and then I think we just need to open it up for conversation, direction, and see if we're hitting the mark here. We did pitch this to the City Council subcommittee made up of Council Member Schwenk and Kalfas, I believe. And so the proposal that's in front of you today, and it was built into the budget, is going from a total, well, let me back up. I don't want anyone to confuse Community Services grant funding with the Community Services Department. That happens like all the time. It's just they share the name, but they have very little, if anything, to do with this. This Community Services grant program is managed out of the City Manager's office, and it's directed towards local nonprofits. We manage the program, so it's not affiliated with TCSD. Okay. In the budget that you heard today, we built this in going from $90,000 a year to, I believe, $165,000. Okay? In front of you, the reform to that would allow nonprofits, and we would raise the ceiling each year from $5,000 to $10,000 per organization per fiscal year. Okay? Total funding, $165,000. The other thing that we heard loud and clear is that we would do our very best to move the timeline of this up from the fall and winter all the way to this summer. So if there's council and there's clear direction and consensus, this program will be advertised sooner than later. We'll roll it out sooner than later, and then funding can go before the City Council and later this summer, and then folks are getting their monies sooner. So there's a timeline, a proposed timeline that's in front of you. The other thing that's proposed here is to treat it like a reimbursement, kind of similar to CDBG. So nonprofits would be expending money, and then they would be coming back to the City Council for reimbursement of those funds, okay? The eligibility for these grants remain pretty much the same. We did explore this with legal. I know there were some concerns from the council about expending these grants on salaries and things of that nature. You can see in there what we're proposing is possibly some of these dollars could be expended towards operational costs as long as they're serving Temecula residents. We could feel good about that. We feel like that is defensible. That could include utilities, insurance, lease, things of that nature, okay? Criteria, nothing's changing in the policy that at least we're proposing. And with that, I think I just want to sort of open it up to the full council for conversation and direction and see how you guys feel about the proposed changes.
Okay, excellent. I appreciate it. So just to make sure that I am on track here, just looking, you're looking for 1, 2, 3, 4 different pieces of this that we're going to be giving direction on for each page. Is that correct?
It's really the program as the whole, as I described
But as
it.
we're discussing here,
Yeah,
moving
yeah.
forward. Okay, all right. Thank you very much. All right, so what I'm thinking is let's first start to take the first chunk here right now when we're looking at the annual Community Services Funding Grant Program. As the city manager stated, we were at 5,000. Oh wait, where are we at? Is that right? Yes. Okay, 5,000 each, moving to 10,000, with a full annual at 90, moving up to 165,000 as a possibility as a whole. So let's start, I guess, right there in looking at how to move forward if that's something we're interested in or whatnot. So, anybody want to start? Go for it, Stu. Start on your side.
I don't have a problem with it.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Go to the left.
I'm good with all of it.
So I have some thoughts, and I'm going to use this space for these thoughts. So I don't have any problems with what we're proposing for this year, right? Because we committed to that at the CDBG meeting. And also, I think it's interesting, or we should also split these up, right? Like the CDBG conversation turned into the community services conversation, and figuring out how to make some of these nonprofits whole. Some of the things that I heard that night gave me a little bit of pause in that, and I articulated that at that meeting in that if you have a nonprofit coming and absolutely needing this $5,000, that kind of signals a little like structural concerns for me, right? So thinking about how do we continue to have this program, investing in the community, investing in our nonprofits is extremely important. They do good work, but how do you build out a program that is sustainable? That's something that's lasts longer than any of the people involved in it. Because some of the things that I've seen is if you have someone that's really dedicated and they have a really great idea, but they don't have the support structure around them, when they move, when they pass away, that just kind of just goes away. And so I had a conversation, and actually, Mayor Alexander, your nonprofit roundtables kind of inspired me to sort of have this broader conversation. So I had a conversation with Tammy Marine and Kim Garish the other day about a resource center, much like how we have TVE2 and we have this business support and this incubator. It's like, how could you have an incubator space that is focused on nonprofits so that they don't have to travel north to San Bernardino County or down into San Diego County for resources. And both of those women are some of the smartest people that I've ever run into. They've run some of the greatest organizations in our community that have done significant good work. And they have a vast amount of knowledge. So we had this like pretty broad conversation about how do you start a resource center and what could that do? And so the old analogy of like, I'd rather teach someone to fish than give them a fish every year kind of came up more than once. And having a resource center, or having a place where nonprofits can build out their muscle, right? Because we need the nonprofits to build up their muscle so that they can go out and they can fundraise, that they know what they're doing with respect to even budgeting and like running it as a business, right? And so this is sort of like a longer plan. I'm not proposing or not suggesting we do anything this fiscal year, but I think going forward, I think we should really look at this program as a whole and find a way, and I think there is a way, to take some of this money and invest it into a resource center so that these nonprofits can again, build up that muscle so that they're, if they don't know how to keep their books, they can figure that out, right? Like they know how to budget, they know how to do the administrative side of things. And, you know, I know that many of the organizations do a good job of that, but not everyone does. And so, you know, some of these guardrails that we're putting in place, I think, are important for, you know, long-term sustainability for the nonprofit community in our community, because again, they do amazing work. So I like to sort of see this transition from just giving away fish to teaching people how to fish, to just use that super simple analogy. Try to create an education center focused on long-term growth for these nonprofits, and then again, giving them the resources so they don't have to travel. They can collaborate, they can network, right? They can get in touch with each other, because you kind of see that on a smaller scale with some of the nonprofits, that they know who they're working with, but provide a space, provide an opportunity for folks to come together. So I'm totally fine with this, everything we're talking about the grant program for this year, but I'd like us to really think more broadly and think a little long-term as well.
Okay, thank you very much for that. I think everybody spoke. I'm going to go, and then we'll hit another roundtable with that one, if that works. So I saw a couple heads nodding and kind of like, oh, that's a little interesting and a different perspective. And I think I have an opportunity to kind of weigh into this after being with a nonprofit for 6.5 years, specifically with resourcing to the community. And it's been wonderful. I've had this opportunity to kind of see a little bit behind the scenes, both in the city council side and also on the nonprofit side. And I can see there's always a balancing and always need for things. So I appreciate that you brought up the fact that people change, needs change, and so we need to be flexible with that. But also, again, going back to that stewardship of being a good steward of the finances that not only that we have, but what we're giving out to individuals within the community. And so I say that because having been on this nonprofit side, I know sitting down with other executive directors, other staff members, not just within my own nonprofit that I worked in, but the fact of the matter is education is huge. And it's not always there. I was at I was at one of the events locally here, and I was talking to another executive director, and she got to the point where she was stating, and I loved it, and it literally turned on a light bulb in my head, even for myself, as nonprofits can't run the way they used to. It's really challenging with today, with the red tape and all of these things coming in with employees. There's a lot to it. So it's a lot more challenging, I believe, today to start up a nonprofit and just say, we're here and we want to do great work. And they do, and they have the heart for it. But the fact of the matter is I believe we either have to do one or two things. We have to educate ourselves within that nonprofit as an executive director, and or be a really good leader to be able to bring in people who know what they're doing, because not everybody can fulfill every role. And that's, as we sit here at this table, everybody brings something. It's the same in the nonprofit. I think there's a lot more business side to it now more than ever. And so I've actually, in the past, I believe either the chamber or the city has brought up, there's been classes for nonprofits, whether it has been with the board of directors, being able to fundraise, different things like that, where it can enhance these nonprofits that are doing great work in our city. I look at that and I'm thinking kind of the buzzwords that are going in my head when what you were talking is TVE2, networking and leadership, and cohorts. And those are kind of the areas, is how is nonprofits, as we had that, I think some of you were out there at the round table, are coming together and having those conversations to build up the leadership within the community. And I think that's a big part of what we're missing, or what we're needing and missing. So I'd like to see some more education, some more business skills be brought forward. And I truly believe as well, some of this funding, I personally right now, looking at this right now with this grant money, I say let's go forward with it, but I think let's re-envision what that can look like for the future. How can that enhance? And I love the fact that you brought up the, give a man a fish and you can feed him for a day, teach a man a fish and you can feed him for a lifetime. And something that came from that was, let's empower our city and our nonprofits with long-term skills that is ultimately more valuable than providing a temporary short-term solution. And that's where I believe we need to move, because we're going to move and we're going to grow and we're going to expand as a city and leaders. So I would like to kind of dig a little bit more into seeing what that would look like. But I would definitely this year, since I know these nonprofits are looking towards getting this money and this funding. I personally would like to move forward on that. But again, I would maybe like to start moving that towards something different in being able to educate and strengthen our community to grow on its own. Again, community serving community, going right back to that same concept that, I started with this year. Mayor Pro Tem, I think you had something?
Yeah, so I mean, look, Zach, I appreciate you bringing this up because, I hate to say, probably about another 10 years ago, we had a similar conversation, right? And part of this is I think this, as a city, we need to be a lot more strategic in our decision-making and support and planning for philanthropy. Because we have a lot of folks who do remarkable work in the community, but we've never really sat down and said, outside of our own strategic planning, what's the priority on that side? Where are we missing gaps that maybe need to be filled, and where could we be collaborating with others to increase that amount of funding that's available? I will say, and I've talked to Betsy quite a bit about this over the years, because I really liked that model we did several years ago with Michelle's Place. While they were in the process of acquiring their facility, there was a significant shortfall, and I remember working with the city manager's office at this time saying, hey, can we just do a one-time $50,000 contribution, but it's only going to happen if they can come up with matching funds. And they did, and I think it was like 2 or 3 times, our contribution that helped, sort of inspire the rest of the community to get on board and pull them over the finish line. And, and that really for me was an eye-opener, saying, hey, there's a lot of philanthropy and things, and the city can help, sort of help inspire those funds, if you will. But we haven't been necessarily thoughtful or strategic about it. And so I agree, I think this year, everything that's on the table that you've presented, Mr. City Manager, 100% support. I'd like to just see us move forward with that. But in the next fiscal year, I'd like to see us have that conversation. And we've tried before. San Diego Foundation does a wonderful job of helping prioritize within the San Diego community. They will not come up here because we're not San Diego County. The Community Foundation is supposed to be our philanthropic arm, and we have had plenty of conversations with them over the years, and I don't see them as being a viable opportunity at all. And we certainly aren't a priority for their operations either. So I think it's up to us to either define that for the city or define, a new sort of organized philanthropic arm that helps focus these initiatives, because 100%, if $5,000 is going to make or break your nonprofit, then I'm really concerned about your long-term resilience and sustainability. And that, especially for folks who are relying on those nonprofits for services and support, when those things drop off, it could be devastating. And so I think it's incumbent on all of us to have that sort of more strategic conversation here in the next year. I don't know how we work that into, our approval today, but maybe city manager has some thoughts on how to kind of kickstart that in the next fiscal cycle.
Would you like to go?
Yeah, no, excellent conversation. I believe I got my direction I needed. Just to be clear, we're gonna reform the program as outlined in front of you. It's budgeted accordingly for fiscal year 26-27. To help the nonprofits, based on the feedback that I heard today, we can move our timeline up for soliciting grants, which I think is important. So we don't have to wait till June 9th. We can begin soliciting later this week or next week that this program is coming to a theater near you. So we begin the solicitation, we begin the advertising, and the applications will come in. They'll go through their normal process. It's budgeted accordingly. The funds become available July 1 or post July 1, and then the award is similar to what we've done in the past, where we go through the subcommittee and we come to council, and then I think nonprofits would be funded maybe as early as later this summer, and if we pull all this off together. So that's what I'm hearing. That's the short term. I'm also hearing big picture, that we need to set aside some time to really discuss this in greater detail, and I think it warrants probably a full council agenda item, to be honest. And we can talk about TV2, we can talk about the ideas that Kim Garish and Habitat and Tammy have brought up, because these are two all-stars in the nonprofit world. that are sharing their wisdom with us, and I think we'd be wise listening to them and how we could support our nonprofit community. So with those two things, unless I missed anything, I'll move forward.
Okay, and so I have a couple more people who want the mic. I'm going to pass it down. Brendan, did you need something? Or?
Yes, no, I just wanted to add that I agree with all of that, and I was thinking that, Stu and I sit on the economic development, also the grant program, and it's, that's a for-profit businesses, but maybe we could work that into this as well, because it's a very similar thing, and Stu and I have said it before, where the hope is that you don't keep coming back asking for more money, where you become profitable, where you don't need the municipal assistance, right? It's like the Balloon and Wine Festival was a great example, where they would come back year after year, and we would grant them $30,000 or $20,000, and the hope is that your business model is manageable on your own and sustainable without local entity donations. So I think just maybe working the economic development piece into that. And I completely agree with what Councilmember Schwenk said. And last year, I guess you can say we put our money where our mouth was, where there was $90,000 allotted, but in that subcommittee, we said, hey, we're only going to put forward $75,000, I think it was, or $76,000. I think we ended up, after it came to the full council, it ended up increasing. But the hope is that we don't have to make you whole, like they said.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what the goal of this program is, to help you at the forefront, but then for you not to come back and need us in the long run. So I completely agree with everything that was said. Thank you.
Love that. I appreciate that. Yeah, no, great insight for both of you.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I just want to add one thing. So when looking at the eligibility, there are things that you cannot include, and scholarship, debt, and salaries is one. But one of the things that we heard from the conversation with Tammy Marine and Kim Garris the other day was like this idea of direct funding for specific salaries, right? So like you might have a nonprofit that's really struggling with their books. That's really important to us as a municipal agency that's donating dollars to these organizations. Is like, are you keeping your books well? Can you hire a bookkeeper? Do you have a subscription to QuickBooks or whatever it is, right? So like I would ask that certainly we don't want to just pay for salaries, although I think you can make a case in some organizations it would be super helpful for them. But look at sort of this like direct funding and like targeted funding, I think is maybe a way to look at it for things like bookkeepers. That's just my example. It's the example we talked about. If it doesn't make it into this year, that's fine. We can do a deeper conversation in the future about it. But that was one thing that we did hear, was like, hey, you could do this targeted funding for specific salaries that help the nonprofit actually function in the black and not be able to present the books to us, because we're asking them to submit paperwork back to us that could help them out as well. So that was just one thought. If it doesn't make it in, it's not the end of the world for me, but I think it's valuable.
Okay, great. I'm just going to throw this in. I'm going to pass the baton to Mayor Pro Tem. If I can just get some assistance here from staff. One of the things for eligibility, just taking a look, are they able to ask for marketing by any chance, or resources or anything? I believe they weren't last time.
Betsy, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, marketing is okay. It just is if it's not political or religious or those type of marketing.
So if there's like resources and things, or not just resources, but information, and I think that's a big part when we're looking at nonprofits, to be able to educate the community, and that can get very expensive. As I think I'm seeing a couple heads nod over there, it gets very expensive. So to my understanding, if they want to be able to give a piece of education for advocacy when they're sitting with clients or whatnot, is that something that is eligible within this for them?
Absolutely. Printing, marketing, advertising, all of that is eligible, again, with the caveat that it's not political or religious or certain requirements. And the council can also extract that if they want, as approvals are approved for each nonprofit entity. Yeah.
Okay, I think that's just hit and miss, maybe something we can process. Was that on that? Okay.
Advertising versus outreach, though, we
Yes.
should be very clear. It's not just random, like outreach specific to, then I think it qualifies, but just general advertising about nonprofit, whatever.
Advertising.
I'm not sure that should qualify.
Advertising for the program or the service that is offered, so that the beneficiaries are aware that they can potentially get a backpack for their school
Right.
supplies or however that goes.
Yeah, and that's
But
what I'm
not-
saying is, but let's make sure we
Exactly.
just use the term outreach.
Outreach.
Because it's,
We'll-
because
we'll
it's not
switch it to
advertising,
outreach.
it's
You're
outreach,
absolutely
yeah.
correct.
Agreed. So that's a good one. And then the last bit that I had a question on, when we're taking a look at their fiscal stability, what are we asking them on that? Because I know people can throw a couple numbers down, but how do we know that they are truly fiscally responsible and doing what they're saying they're going to do with it to move forward?
Right, so we do have some, there is a questionnaire in there to provide the financials, the revenues and expenditures of their program. So we review that as well to make sure they're not fully relying on the city only, that they have other revenue sources for their program.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Betsy. And I believe, Pro Tem, you have something else?
Yeah, and it was just, I mean, a perfect segue, because the last thing I was thinking of when you talk about the accountability, fiscal accountability is, a lot of grantors have requirements, and Betsy, I'm sure you're well aware, is for single audits or programmatic audits that, periodically you're going to ask for, some documentation that's an independent audit of the financial stability. And I don't know if we want to necessarily tackle that right now in this conversation, but can we put that on the checkbox as well? Because, if you're into year 5, 6, 7, 8 of, us funding a program, but have no, then it would be great to have a single audit or a programmatic audit or something independent to help verify that what's happening is happening.
Agreed. Yeah, I definitely agree with that, because sometimes I think people can just put numbers down, so. Any other thoughts before we move on? Yes.
Well, I know a lot of these organizations that we give this money to. We don't really give it to people we're not really familiar with. For instance, Thrifting for Gifting. I was just at the scholarship program for TVS, Dollars for Scholars. And, they gave away, I don't know, it was like 10 or 20, I don't know. They gave away a lot of scholarships. So for me, this money really isn't trying to keep anybody afloat. It's trying to show support for what they're doing in the community. It's really our contribution. And the fact that we can even do it is the fact that we're fiscally responsible. We wouldn't be having this conversation if we were in the red. This would be the first program we'd cut probably. And so the fact that we're having this conversation, and Michelle's Place, we know exactly what they do and how they affect our community. Boys and Girls Club, we know exactly what they do. And they have all their own fundraisers. This $5,000 that we were giving them is just literally a drop in the bucket, and they could show a receipt for that in 10 seconds. So most of these organizations that we give to are really very high-profile, responsible nonprofits in our community. We rarely give to that one-off that we don't know. So to me, a lot of this conversation is kind of a moot point, because we're giving it to the right people already, and we're just showing our support for that organization and the things they do. My only question is, in this update of the grant funding, what if it's a service organization that does a lot of travel to and from to get, let's just say like CASA, where, they're driving, is gas reimbursable?
So that's a good question.
Yeah.
And part of this is the city may consider operational expenses, and I
Yeah.
would consider that an operational
Operational.
expense to get where they need to go.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And that's something that I think, we need to be, relatively flexible about, with the costs, again, spiraling out of control for gas and even rent, and, that and like I said, what we give is a drop in the bucket of their total budget. So it's not something, if they lose it tomorrow, they're going to fold. And again, to me, it's just a support system that we as a city say, we love what you do, and here is a little token of our appreciation for being in our community. That's really what I see this as. And like I said, we're lucky we can even do this. So That's my 2 cents.
No, thank you for that, Stu. And you're 100% right. There are a lot of cities that don't have the ability to do this, and we're very blessed on that end. So very good pointing that out. All right. Anything else? I think yes.
Just one last item for future agendas. Can you just confirm for us either now or on the council hearing that as the project with SDG&E is moving forward, that we are contemplating a fund as needed for that effort?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. So, city manager, we're good to go with the timeline?
I think everyone sounds pretty comfortable. We will formalize these changes, and as soon as we can, we will begin advertising to our nonprofit community. It's budgeted accordingly. They can begin filling out their applications. Again, this is on a reimbursement basis, and then sometime after July 1, those checks can be cut only after the subcommittee and the full city council has approved those recommendations. So we'll get to work on that. All right, final item, city council discretionary funding. Some of you have brought this to my attention. Not to be confused with CDBG or community service funding. This is a standalone program. It's been in existence as long as I can remember. It is housed out of the manager's office. It's a $5,000 per council member discretionary program for grants that you all choose to give to each and every fiscal year, but similar criteria to what we just discussed. They have to be nonprofits. They have to have their status. And I'll open it up for conversation. It's a total fiscal of $25,000. Again, $5,000 per council. It's budgeted accordingly. I think there's a desire to have a conversation to possibly double that in the upcoming fiscal year. So I'll open it up to conversation with council, whoever wants to begin.
Okay. All right, I'm just going to kick this off. And just to let my council know, the reason I wanted to kind of bring these two items closer together is because totally separate funding, completely different. $25,000, and I think a lot of us know, if you've talked to the nonprofits, giving $5,000, they're very appreciative. It's always great. I've seen great work done with it. Sometimes when we split up the money as well, it can be very broken. I know sometimes some nonprofits just need that extra $1,000 or $2,000. And I think at this point in time, we're doing better than ever being able to just help them out where they're at with receipts and everything. I know Stacy and Betsy, your whole guys' team does a great job being able to make sure they get the resources. My thought right now with this is I'm going to be the bad guy. I would love to kind of, as much as I love having my own little nonprofit or nonprofits to be able to distribute to, I personally would be okay with being able to kind of melt that into, if at all possible, with the community services grant program, and being able to reallocate that $25,000 into wherever we're moving forward, either this year or the following year, just having that conversation piece. Again, I think it kind of falls in alignment with, with the nonprofits. And I think we can definitely find some ways to be able to just really do really good things with even more money if we're going to move towards that route. So with that, let's start with you. You're looking right at me.
All right. I would disagree. I think I would be in favor of doubling it from the current 25 to 50,000. Like city manager said, it's been in place for 10, 15, 20 years, however long. $5,000 went a lot farther back then than it does now. Some people don't even apply for the grant because it's not worth it for them to go through all the headache to get the $1,000, right? So I think I would be in favor of increasing it from $5,000 per council member to $10,000 per council member for a total of $50,000, and keeping them separate, this from the community service grant program.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Yeah, so this is super interesting. Like on the individualistic side of myself, it's really nice to be able to go to an organization, whether it's a VFW or like our Nicholas Place when they were doing good work, and say, hey, I've got this grant money. fill it out, and you got, $2,500 at the time, or $5,000. I think, that side of it is good, because you can kind of direct that funding to the exact organization you want. You could argue that you're picking winners and losers, right, at that point, with very little criteria, no guardrails. There's not a ton of accountability. I've sort of struggled with that. Like, I still haven't spent my council discretion funding for this last fiscal year. I'm certainly not in favor of raising it to $10,000. We just raised community services, which it makes sense, and you can make the argument, like was made, that folks aren't applying for it because it's not worth their time and effort. That could be an argument. I certainly haven't had an issue with people taking the $5,000. They just got to go through a little more work to do it. I would rather see this, much like the mayor stated, just dissolve it. Leave this fiscal year alone, so let it go for another year, whatever, so it's not causing any issues, and then let that roll into, whatever this education component looks like. It's only $25,000, potentially $50,000, so I would just much rather see, stricter guardrails on the funding that we are using, and where it goes, and using this money to deepen the well, strengthen the pool of nonprofits through education. So however I can direct that funding is to, I think, better the community overall long-term. So I'd be fine leaving it alone, leaving the status quo. I'm certainly not in favor of raising it or, modifying it next year into some sort of education component and do away with the council discretionary funding.
Okay. Thank you, Zach. Mayor Pro Tem?
Yeah, I'm either in favor of, keeping the status quo or like I said, reevaluating it for the following year. I don't necessarily need to, while I understand the intent and the purpose that we all have our specific objectives and things that we like to support, I also think there's a lot of value in seeking that consensus among the council, and so I just, I'm okay either keeping it as it is or let's review it next year.
Okay, so he's in the middle. Yes, sir.
I'm in favor of keeping it. And it's definitely something that me as a city councilman, I have the ability to support an organization that maybe the rest of the council wouldn't want to support. So it gives me as an individual the opportunity to support someone that's doing a service for our city. And so I like to have that opportunity. Now, it's gotten to the point now where you really can't split it up anymore. You got to give the whole 5,000 or don't. 1,000, it's too much paperwork to go through it for. That's what everybody tells me who I've given 1,000 or 2,000 for. 90% of the time, they don't even go for the money. I mean, it's just sitting there at the end of the year. So I've gotten to the point where I pick one, it goes to one, then they'll apply for it and go through all the paperwork to get it. But it's 5,000 is not that much anymore. Again, we're going back to inflation. 5,000 used to be a lot of money, and it's not that more. So I'm in favor of keeping it because it does give me a little sense to kind of be able to support an organization that maybe doesn't have the support of the rest of the city council. So I'm in favor of keeping it. Doubling it, maybe not. Again, being more fiscally responsible. I want to stay in the black as much as we can. So yeah. But like I said, it's really just a one shot to one organization, really.
Okay. Okay, so great heart on this. I totally get all perspectives and stuff like that. So what I'm hearing as a consensus, I think if I get all head nods, let's move forward with this for the 5,000 where we're at. Are we good with that for right now for this year? But my question is can we bring this back up maybe subcommittee or in a conversation? I think as we're looking at the community grant services program, Can we just possibly have that full conversation also with the council discretionary funds to take a look, is there something better we could be doing with that? Is there a better way that we could just make it all work and fit, that maybe we're just not sitting here right now a little bit past 12 thinking about? So I'd like to bring back, possibly if the council's okay, just to have more discussion on that and how to make these programs better for our community, specifically for our nonprofits, to grow in different ways. So are we in consensus with that? Are we good? Okay, yes, sir.
I just have one thing in regards to that, and if maybe Betsy could hit on this real quick, just for transparency purposes. Can you just talk about the criteria and the guardrails and the accountability very briefly on, what the council discretionary funds, that there are guardrails, there is a lot of accountability with that money, and there is a criteria, specific criteria that those nonprofits have to hit in order to receive that $5,000?
Yes, good question. And the application is exactly the same as the community service funding. So their receipts must, comply with what the program is. So there's it's just the same as the community service funding. The community service funding for the $10,000 is now a reimbursable expenses. Moving forward, the council discretionary remains the same, where we give them the money, they give their receipts afterwards, but we chase them for the receipts.
Thank you very much. That's all, Madam Mayor.
I'll just add to that, because it's important, certainly there are guardrails. Using that term, it doesn't happen at a public meeting, right? Like, someone reaches out to you, you reach out to them, it's not voted on, it's like, so that was my term, like trying to get those guardrails of like, not to say that anything bad is happening, that's not my point. My point is like bringing this into the full view of the public is all. Thank you.
That's a good point. It is not at a city council meeting.
It's the only difference between what we discuss, CS funding and discretionary. CS funding requires a majority of the council to approve a grant. Discretionary is discretionary. Each of you have complete discretion. You don't need a consensus of the full council to authorize those grants. That is the biggest difference.
I mean, easy answer is just, have a quick policy that says you have to report out at council during your council report where you're putting the discretionary fund.
I like that.
Done, right? Yeah.
That's really good, actually. Yeah.
Under council reports, like not an agenda item, just council reports. I like that.
I like that too. Good. I like that. Wow. Okay. Good stuff. All right. So we're good to go. We're going to bring all this back. Somebody else had something. There was a hand raised. You're good? You're good? No, we're good? Brendan? All right. Staff, anything that we missed?
I think we said a lot. I think
we
we're
said a
good.
lot.
Thank you for the support.
All right. Well, again, staff, thank you guys for everything. Community, thank you for all your involvement. Nonprofits, thank you for your involvement in the community. We just look forward to seeing how we're going to continue this conversation and continue to roll out as a fiscally conservative community. So with that being said, I want to adjourn this meeting at 12:17. Thank you very much.